Welcome everyone to the June 2nd meeting of the Town of Richmond Select Board. We began the meeting with public comment on items not on the agenda. So is there anybody present remotely or in person? Mary, you want to squeeze in between the kids?
One of your spots for a moment and then you can have it back. Thank you. Miss me?
We did. Oh, yeah.
Hi there, Mary Hull present. I want to thank the Highway Department for the swift and skillful removal of the problem trees and the green islands out here behind the post office in the parking lot. Because these trees were both shedding limbs and bark, they posed, I think I spelled that wrong, poised, they posed a real danger to the public because of proximity to public access, both vehicular and pedestrian. When such a risk is identified, action must be taken to correct the situation due to direct liability. We recognize the risk and the town took the action. Thank you. Number two, as I do yearly on my own, I attend the annual Tree Warden Arbor Day Conference in Randolph, which was held this past Thursday. Two of our breakout sessions spoke directly to the tree issues. While Burlington deals with this as an ongoing issue, both Montpelier and Rutland faced these issues recently using town labor services. They received an estimate of $10,000 for just town services to dig out and put in trees. That involved replacing the compacted soil with 1,200 cubic feet of new soil, which was enriched with compost and biochar. Professional tree services start at $40,000 cost, using similar start techniques, meaning excavating the hole, putting in geotextiles and grow cells for the expected success of the tree installation. Replacement of the impermeable surfaces adjacent were also done to increase the ongoing success and the life of the tree installed. Requiring permeable pavers and rain garden-like drains to direct rainwater to the tree roots were also required to continue the area of the tree growth. So here in Richmond, with all the years and years and years of soil compaction out here around this building, the cost to rehab the soils, create the understructure, and replant any tree is not a cost we can afford. Right tree, right place. I just wanted you all to be aware that that's what happened. That's why the trees came down. Imminent risk and danger is what forced that. But we cannot afford a small, on the small side, 10,000 nor 40,000. So I hope we can just be happy with a little green grass growing out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Is there any, Mr. Bender, please go ahead.
I'm going to make a request that you guys table one of the items on tonight's agenda. Can I make that statement now?
You're welcome to make it.
Okay, thanks. Just give me a sec here. First, I want to just read a brief excerpt from the 2018 town plan. It goes like this.
And this is public comment for things not on the agenda.
Yeah.
So actually, no.
What I just said, I want you to table something that's on the agenda.
We're not going to be tabling it. Ian would like us to table the discussion of the Black Lives Matter sign. We're not going to be tabling that. I don't know.
Okay, well, I'd like to, when can I make this comment about?
When we get to the agenda item. When we get to the agenda item.
So are you going to make me wait until you guys discuss the proposal before I make my statement?
It's the second thing on the agenda, Ian. We need to move on.
But what I'm asking, I'm going to ask you guys not to discuss this tonight. So when am I going to get an opportunity to do that before you start the discussion?
Ian, we have people here specifically to discuss it.
That's,
we're not going to table it.
Well, do you know what? That's besides the point. You guys didn't properly warn the item.
Could you please
and it needs to be properly warned.
Ian, we're going to mute you. We have to move on. Sorry about that. We do have an item on the agenda to discuss the Black Lives Matter sign and flag. We do not have to take a vote on it tonight, but we are certainly entitled to have a discussion of it. If at that time the board chooses to not take a vote or to vote in a particular fashion, they're welcome to do that. But we do have people here who do wish to discuss it, so we're not going to table it just because one person wants us to.
Will it be appropriate to hear Ian's statement and then choose to table or not table it? I don't know.
We don't. This is for things that are comment on things that are not on the agenda.
When we get the agenda item.
When the agenda item comes, certainly.
So that at the beginning of that agenda item, he can propose.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm proposing.
Okay,
right.
Sorry. So Ian, at the beginning of the agenda item, before we have discussed it, you can propose that we table it.
Item B. Yeah, it's the second on the agenda. Chris.
As one of the people who came to discuss that item, I was listening carefully, and what I think I heard is that there's a possibility that the item was not properly warned. Can we have a check on that before we?
No, it was properly warned. It was, the agenda says, discussion of proposed changes to the Black Lives Matter sign and flag resolution. That's exactly what the agenda item is, discussion of proposed changes. No specific action must be taken tonight.
Okay, I just want to make sure,
Mhm.
because it's a shame to take the time and then have
We-
to redo the procedure.
Well, no, what we can do is discuss what the changes would be, mull them over, give the town a chance to think about them and vote on them at the next meeting. But we're not going to just cut off discussion because one person wants us to. We're in favor of discussion, not just silencing things because of a particular point of view.
I'm not sure that that's what you want.
Well, we have not run it past our lawyers whether we have warned it properly, and so we're going to err on the side that we can at least have the discussion. And if the board wishes to table it, that's something the board can elect to do when we get to that agenda item.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comment on anything not on the agenda? Okay, are there additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Seeing none, our first item on the agenda is from our fourth grade class, Mrs. Is it Dumas or Dumas? Dumas, okay, this is a project citizen research they've done regarding dog safety, and they are here to present it to us, so I'm gonna turn the floor over to you.
I'm actually gonna turn it over to my students. You guys want to stand?
Got him.
So that you can introduce yourself to the Blackboard.
Thanks.
Introduce your.
I'm Sam. I'm Lila. I'm Julia. I'm Sam.
And they worked all year working on identifying a problem in their community, doing some research on it, and coming to a solution that they wanted to pitch to a decision maker. And they decided that you guys are the decision makers on this idea, so I can have a proposal for you.
Oh, thank you for being here.
So how do you guys want to do this? I know there's videos. Are we playing the videos or are they going to speak?
Everyone in their class be represented.
Okay,
For it.
so,
Here's any questions.
all right.
I'm sure the parents will love that.
So should we just go through and just hit the videos?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Oh, wait, I gotta make sure that I'm sharing sound too on the Zoom, right? Okay, so how do we do that?
No, you're fine.
Shoot, there's like one other button you have to press. Okay.
You guys all thought making the presentation would be the hardest part, but us playing it's the hardest.
I think it's share computer sound.
Wouldn't have helped.
Okay,
Hopefully that'll work.
hopefully that'll work. All right. Okay, here we go. Hope if I turn my sound up. Okay, maybe this will go.
Try hitting the any key.
I have to actually unmute the video and my laptop. Okay, third time's a charm. There we go.
Hello, we are Miss Dumas' fourth grade class. We are doing Project Citizen in Library and Enrichment class. Project Citizen is an academic class that we do in school.
Okay. What do I?
We try and solve problems.
Sunday.
No,
Mute
it's
your microphone and let the video play.
mute my microphone on this side.
I think so. Well, mute both
Hello, we are Hello, we are Miss Dumas' fourth grade class. We are doing Project Citizen in Library and Enrichment class. Project Citizen is an academic class that we do in school. We try and solve problems and help the world. We did research by interviewing people and reading articles. We interviewed the Great Escape and the Humane Society. We are pitching our solution to you.
The problem that we came to consensus on as a class is that dogs off leash are not safe.
Dogs are going into neighbors' yards and into roads. Richmond has no dog parks and no off-leash trails, so dogs do not have any places to be free and get their energy out. Please consider our informed request.
That's crazy. That's cool.
This is our informed request. Would you please consider a dog park with 2 different areas for small and large dogs? It would need a chain link fence about 5 to 6 feet tall and a big field. Also, can you put in a hiking trail where dogs can be off leash? Because in Richmond, there is a hiking trail for dogs, but your dog has to wear a leash, which is not fair because they can't run around as much. Also, it's not always safe for dogs to be around busy roads. So in all, we are asking for this: separate spaces for dogs in a dog park, trails where dogs can be off leash and run, more dog safety close to roads. Why a dog park?
Without dog parks, dogs might do things like bite someone, run away somewhere, or go on someone else's private property. They also need exercise, so they are calmer inside the house.
Dogs can get more energy out in a dog park compared to a leash walk. Why have 2 different spaces?
Big dogs can accidentally run over smaller dogs. Both dogs and humans can socialize and benefit from a dog park.
Richmond residents don't have access to a dog park in town or nearby. It is at least a 20-minute drive to get to the nearest dog park. An off-leash trail would be helpful for both dogs and humans to get exercise. In an uncontained way, the dog can walk the human. The dog can help lead the way and have some freedom. An off-leash trail can be a less stimulating way for dogs to get energy out. This would also give them lots of places to smell and keep their brains energized. It would help them feel safe and calm. Dogs need enrichment in dog parks, and off-leash trails can help dogs play. Dogs should be on their leash in all other spaces because it keeps them and others safe.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Are there questions from members of the board of these lovely students and their presentation?
Sure.
Art?
Have you thought about a place? Have you talked at all about like where a dog park might go in Richmond? Not really?
The first idea was, of course, Volunteers Park, but we know because of the flooding, that was an issue. So we're hoping others might, yes, are there any other ideas from my student?
Somewhere in the woods, they can smell stuff. There's open fields.
Open fields in the woods, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff, that wouldn't run. Places.
Yeah. Anyone
Well,
else?
thanks.
Did anyone else have an idea? I saw you raise your hand a little bit, maybe. Did you raise your hand a little? Did you have a thought of maybe where it could be?
Space like with a big field, but then like some woods.
Some woods near there too. Great idea. Yeah. Nice.
I don't own a dog, but I've often thought it'd be nice if we did have a dog park because there is the issue of unleashed dogs getting a little overenthusiastic, which you guys mentioned. And second, I really love going along the Burlington Recreation Trail and stopping at the various dog parks and just watching. Because if I don't have dogs, I can watch other people's dogs. So I would love to see something come of this. Mary, go ahead.
So I think you did an excellent presentation. It's too bad we had trouble with the audio. I have a question for whoever was the leader or the teacher, Ms. Dumas.
Oh, Mrs. Wood, I'm the
I'm
librarian.
sorry, okay. Have you done any research directing these folks as to why Richmond currently does not have a dog park?
We did not do that research.
I'll give
it some research from Perch Forum that there does seem to be a need for some kind of dog.
Well, sure, see, I thought that's what you were gonna present, dog safety, and I was excited to learn about that. We didn't get a lot about dog safety, but maybe that'll be a future presentation, but Richmond currently doesn't have a dog park because it costs money to maintain, it costs money to build. The highway department has enough to do, they're not gonna pick up. This is reality, somebody has to change a kid's diaper, somebody has to change the litter box. But dogs that are in proximity to the water and sewer.
My students did know that there are other considerations, but they did their research and wanted to discuss to decision makers. So they can discuss it and make a decision. They know that it's not an automatic. That's why they're coming to a select board to have them consider the idea.
Yeah, but the parasite issue is the issue that is
So
concerned.
that is an idea to bring to the decision makers who's gonna do it, not my students.
No, that's why I asked to speak to you, because I've already given fair claim to the students. But the water and sewer superintendent, former and current, have considerations about various issues related to parasite and dog feces. That's a concern.
I don't think this.
That's okay.
Oh, no, I just don't think that that's me or my students' decision to make.
Correct.
But Mary, it's a fair point to bring up. Should we discuss this in the future?
Yes.
I have a question. So if we were to have a dog park, I've had some experience with some dog parks in Burlington, and there were some ideas that people had of how we as a community could come together and maintain that. Have we thought about, what it would take to maintain the dog park and like who could do that? Like, could we all pitch in a little bit, or like, are there other ideas that we could do so that we could all enjoy it together? Has anyone thought about that? It's okay if you haven't. What do you think?
I think from our discussions, what they have, I probably haven't gotten to that part of that, but they have thought about being able to post rules so that people can have a clear understanding of how the behavior of dogs and their humans should be in that area, including picking up after your dog and what friendly behavior with dogs are and why they actually pitched two separate areas for a large dog and a small dog so that they can interact in friendly ways.
That's great. I love that. Thinking of the rules that come next. Sometimes when we listen to these things that come to the board here, the folks that come to us will then take ideas back and do some more research and so forth. And so are there other things that you're going to look into, or is this the end of your project, or is there something up next?
We would love to do more. We have 2 weeks left.
Oh, yeah.
They are graduating on to.
Cool.
Very exciting. Well, I think you've done a great job. So thank you for bringing your idea to us. I love all the research that you did, and I think it's a wonderful idea to bring to the community. So thank you.
Thank you all very, very much for coming.
You guys, appreciate it.
Hey, I have one other thing. There's 7 of you and there's 8 cookies here.
Oh.
You guys interested?
Bad. So.
Great job, guys. Thanks
Should
for
Josh
coming.
get a
It takes
cookie for
lot.
doing the audio?
I don't think I deserve a cookie with my audio performance.
We have the audio.
I think we're back.
Performance you gain in troubleshooting ability, Josh.
Yeah, there you go. Still not cookie worthy, I don't think. Yeah, I think. You saw it.
Somebody's sunglasses?
There's no motion.
Right, no, it's a discussion.
We can agree to discuss it.
Official, like,
Sure, it's a discussion.
they just said, hey, let's talk about these 2 things.
Yes.
But then I can't.
I know.
You don't.
I got words. Shouldn't we have to?
There's no. You don't have to post the facts.
I got.
Could this have been more descriptive with what you were asking? Maybe.
I mean, we don't, there's no motion.
But there's no motion, but I mean, every agenda item.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. So
They can put it.
as we close out that agenda item, maybe we return to it in the future and just say, maybe with our Parks Committee group, like, have they put any thought into where it would be possible and desirable to do any kind of dog park?
Yeah, that's definitely an item to take forward to another agenda. Okay, so we are coming to the second item on the agenda, and there was a mention made earlier of a request to table this discussion and prevent it from taking place. That request is out of order, and I'd like to explain why. I consulted a guide to Robert's Rules of Order. The motion to table is a subsidiary motion in Robert's Rules of Order that would apply to a specific main motion or question that is currently pending. It does not apply to a topic that is not even the subject of a formal motion yet. There is no motion to table, long story short. Now, it seems what Mr. Bender wants is to prevent us from having the discussion at all. And the board is certainly empowered to say, we don't want to discuss this, let's move on. Is there any desire on the part of the board to do not discuss the subject of the Black Lives Matter sign, or shall we discuss it? Will you text me?
My only concern would be that we didn't properly warn it in this discussion.
that there were-
So if that's been solved, then.
The question of
Say no, I
warning,
would not.
we have to warn action items. There is no action.
There you go.
There's no motion before us that we have to warn. So Mr. Bender is incorrect. We don't have to, as a matter of fact, Josh was just noting to me that the same is true of every single other item on our agenda, with the exception of the zoning hearing. In some cases, it's discuss proposal for opting into this or that government program. That is all that we have in many cases, or that's all the public would have. And consequently, we can't say in advance, this is the motion that would be made, we will now warn that, because in some cases they're just discussion items. And that's how I see this, as essentially a discussion item that could lead to a motion, but is not guaranteed to. And in any event, as I said, the board could agree that they don't want to discuss this, but there's nothing to table at this time. So is there a member of the board who would like to not have a discussion about the Black Lives Matter sign? Okay. Ian, do you have anything to contribute?
Yeah, so you guys are not going to vote on this tonight?
I can't guarantee that, but there is no motion before us at the moment, so there's nothing to table.
I got a problem with that.
That's okay.
I would like to read what I had to say. I would like people to hear it. I think it's
When we are
I don't
done,
think it's a good look for you guys
Ian,
to stifle me
open the-
here.
Ian, we're not stifling you. We're asking you to speak up at the appropriate time, and you're
Okay.
trying to jump the gun.
I would like to have the first public comment.
We'll see if we can do that. In the short term, though, let's go ahead and move on at the agenda item. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis, and then we have members of the Richmond Racial Equity Committee here to speak to this. As is in the packet, available to the public, some years ago, the Select Board voted to authorize, and you're welcome to bring this up if you like, authorize the placement of a Black Lives Matter sign and flag out in front of the town offices for a certain amount of time each year. And that is coming up here.
Yep.
Okay, so what you have on your screens is the resolution in support of displaying the Black Lives Matter sign from June of 2020. And so there were a bunch of whereases, and then the ultimate be it resolved was that a sign would be placed out in front of the town center for 3 months, beginning on June 19th, 2020. And that's Juneteenth, and running for 3 months after that. And then I believe we had subsequent motions.
Well, there was an amendment to that.
Amendment to that, which is now being brought up. The amendment shows that this practice of placing the sign and flag out front would begin each June 19th each year, as opposed to just the 1 year. So are there any questions from the board about, for those of you maybe who weren't here at the time, about these two resolutions? One of the things that often is beneficial to bring up is that people said, if you're going to put a Black Lives Matter sign out front, why can't I put my sign out in front advocating the banning of trapping or banning abortion or any other cause? And we checked with our lawyers, and the lawyers said, such a sign is speech by the Select Board. It is not public speech. And so the Select Board is entitled to speak, and we don't necessarily have to give equal time to everybody else in town, or we'd have the wall and the sidewalk absolutely covered with signs. So that's a legal basis for us having the sign out there. So that brings us to the current day. Members of the Richmond Racial Equity Group who sponsored this back in the beginning are here tonight, and they would like to change the appearance of the sign a little bit. I'm not going to speak for them, even though I know more or less what the request is. Would you guys like to come up and tell us about what you'd like to see changed?
That's the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bonnie Stoyer from representing Richmond Racial Equity. I think that folks that have driven through town have seen our sign. It's been very, very simple, basic. I think the only real complaint that we have heard about the sign is that it is aesthetically was not at all that it could be. So we are here to offer an improvement. There is a new sign that has been designed by one of our own Richmond residents who is an artist. And Jay, I think you have a photograph of that.
Did I send that to you?
It was
I don't think I got a photograph now.
I can.
bad that it wasn't in the packet because it would have been great.
I don't
for
think it
y'all
was
to
officially
have
submitted to that. It was
something.
just shared in our meeting the other night.
Okay.
But essentially, it would be a yellow sign.
Yeah, it's just a broad strokes here. Using the exact same sign that has been approved previously in terms of size. It would be a yellow background. If anybody is familiar with Emily Mitchell's artistic work, it is in sort of the style that she paints in. There is a heart that and also to say and to be clear, this sign, I think, suggests a broader definition of inclusion than just Black Lives Matter, which is also something that people had suggested might be helpful in the past. I particularly think it's important in these times that we're living in that we are standing by our values. And so this sign has it's a heart. It says inside the heart, it is filled essentially with LGBTQ flag. Inside, it says on one side of the sign, it says Black Lives Matter down the side. And on the other side of the sign, it says all are welcome here. So that's I
Right.
wish you could see it because it's
I can't seem to find
quite
the
lovely.
pictures.
Me too.
Debbie, did you send me that?
No, remember you took it and took the.
Oh, that's, I apologize. I took a rough photo on a late night.
So, and
Okay, wait a minute. Can you guys hear us now? Yeah.
That? Okay, good.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what changed. I didn't touch a thing. Well, at that time, but I don't know why it went from a conversation to then nothing without changing. Sorry.
That's okay. Is there anything I?
Maybe describe the sign. Did anybody online hear what she was saying about this design of the sign?
If Jay can actually pull up the image that, obviously a picture is worth 1,000 words. So.
We heard the description they said, so it sounds like it just recently went mute.
Okay, cool. And interestingly, Ian has, just because I know Ian's going to speak, Ian has brought forth some concerns in the past about the sign that was out front, and he objected to it aesthetically. And so I would hope that he would be more open to what we're proposing. You have the other side, Jay?
So, ladies and gentlemen, the other night I took a snapshot of this by phone, which I completely forgot taking that. And we certainly think about this and vote on it, and we'll see if it's appropriate. Although the deadline gave very much time because June 19th will be 2 days after our estimate.
Yes, and Emily needs to paint this sign.
Right. So on one side, you'll see it's yellow, which is bright and purple, it's built to do black lives and theme. And then we now essentially the pride flag or the diversity flag, all of it. And on the other side is something that's the same one to all of them.
Right. And the sign as it is constructed is actually not a sandwich board sign. It's actually 2 pieces of wood that are put together and then it's posted with posts. So that's not exactly the same, but that is the graphic that we're proposing.
Well, Jay, I'm looking at our previous resolutions and what we looked at this then. The resolution has a period of silence as to the actual appearance of both the sign and flag.
True.
So I'm not clear of what our intent was. I think it's appropriate that whatever we approve it, but I think it would be covered. A change in design would be covered by approval, this voice vote, but by the previous resolution. Does that make sense?
So hold on, there's like a gremlin in the system because now we're getting messages that they can't hear and we've touched nothing. But they can hear me and they can hear Bonnie. They couldn't. Can you guys hear on this side? Can you hear Katie and David? No.
Okay,
I don't. They were working for water and sewer, and they were working earlier in the meeting. Well, I was on this before. To everyone, and now we should be back. Did somebody like kick?
My laptop sound is not on.
Well,
now it's back.
It's picking me up.
It says now back.
What is David back and Caitlin back? Did something get unplugged? Maybe.
Something for in my house, it's definitely kids.
Well, they can hear. I mean, my microphone's working. David, if you speak. Yeah, yours isn't coming up for some reason.
That's me 1, 2, 3.
Is it my microphone or is it my laptop that's working?
Well, I know that when you're.
D123, test for sort of. It's just my laptop. I don't think they're buying. I'm pretty sure it's a hardwire. You're in, okay.
I'm dead.
Text him.
You take. This is gonna be.
Go back out and then back in.
I don't know.
Which one normally controls the audio? This one on the left?
Yeah. And like, see. So it should be
It should be the microphone right.
New Tech NDI. So it should be New Tech NDI audio, but when I go to the top one, which is where it was. Do we have audio now?
Just again.
How about this?
Oh, there you go.
You are the host now.
Can we hear this side of the
Can
table?
you hear Caitlin?
Hello?
Can you hear David?
Oh, good. Okay, we're good.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, so
You'll turn it off, turn it back on. Thanks, Jay.
Gosh, what does this button do?
Yeah, let's not do any of that. I'm glad they don't run
You want
into
to plug
this
this?
facility.
So where we were,
Yes.
if I remember, I was saying, looking at our previous resolutions, the original and then the amended, which was to do it annually, we referred to a flag and a sign, but there's no image of the flag and sign in those resolutions. I think we just looked at them and said, yeah, those. So presumably a change in it wouldn't be a change in the resolution. We just say, yeah, that change is okay or not. It doesn't seem like the change in design is necessarily substantial. If it's still a Black Lives Matter flag and a Black Lives Matter sign. Does that make sense?
it does to me. David?
Makes sense to me. I mean, that makes sense to me. And
Mhm.
so the material change would be the time frame
Yes.
with which it's displayed would be kind of.
Right.
Separate resolution.
Right. So just to be clear then, we can move forward with having the sign repainted in this much more aesthetically pleasing way.
Do we have an image of the current one? So literally for the record, you say, here's the new one, here's the old one?
So that the old
I
one,
go back to my photos for.
the old one is white background with block lettered in black, Black Lives Matter on both sides. Lovingly initially created by.
Which is at the time, at one point, that was kind of the standard
That was
sign.
pretty like your basic sign, if
Yeah.
it wasn't sort of the Black Lives Matter sign that folks were getting from the Black Lives Matter organization.
And this is, the discussion is about changing the sign, not the flag.
The flag has gone missing. I don't know if the flag was found last year. We had right, correct?
We have the flag.
Oh, we have the flag now. Okay. So we would not be changing.
Turns
the
out
flag.
if you give them money, they give you new flags.
Well, there's that too. Yes, we have a flag.
So keep the same flag as previously approved, and then it's a change in the sign as approved in a previous resolution. It seems to me, Jay, deferring to you, that it would be, do we accept, on the first step might be accepting a change in the sign consistent with the existing resolution.
I think that's an interpretation that can be taken, but I'd like to hear from the rest of the board because this is your speech. This is speech by the select board as well as the citizens found, but it's legally our speech. So what are your thoughts? Do we just say we never specified, go ahead? Or do we want to go down the line and say that one looks good? This is not the kind of thing that comes up every week. So anybody?
So the timeline of the display doesn't change, and I'm only asking that because I know like we had it around Juneteenth, right? But then June is Pride Month, and so the timeline doesn't change for now at all.
The timeline doesn't change for now, although I think it is rather lovely that the sign includes this broader diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I think that's a topic for another day, and
The timeframe?
the timeframe to be revisited as a separate agenda item, to expand that out to June. And then in terms of, can you go to the side B again?
Oh, I apologize.
Sorry.
I was reading the chat.
Oh, yeah, great. Okay, I just wanted to take a look at that too. And so this sits on the street, and one side is as you're driving one way, and the other side is as you're driving the other way, just making sure.
Yeah. And Emily just wanted to make sure that people knew that this is a very rough mock-up. It would be way more pretty even than this.
Sorry, gorgeous. I don't think there's a change to what we've put in place in the memorandums that we have in place, so I don't. It's just,
I would, just as I'm devil's advocate, I'm not a member of this group, so I'm not being hostile. I think there's a point to be made that there should at some point be some ratification of design, because there will be people who will say, what's stopping you from sticking a Black Lives Matter sign out there with a swastika? Now, you would never in a million years do that. I know that, but we're essentially granting them carte blanche to put literally whatever they want out there, as long as it has the words Black Lives Matter on it. And so I think at some point it might not be a bad idea to sign off on the design, but I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, I would like to see this symbol referenced in the document.
Yeah, you could kind of go either way. I think that it says Black Lives Matter in the document, and that says Black Lives Matter as well. To that point, I think that it would probably be just a good checkpoint to also put in that we're showcasing Pride flag and all are welcome here as part of that too. Just to make sure that it's in writing, I guess.
I want to, while we're on the topic, on the font of useless information, the town of Glover, of all places, has a sign that is similar in intent to this. I'm going to try to make this picture much larger so you can see it well. This is what the town of Glover has done. And so that's just a way you could be, it would help if I share it, wouldn't it?
Switch your screen, yes.
I'm seeing it on my own screen and.
Yeah. Got it frozen.
Okay. Let's try this again. Okay, the town of Glover's sign is here. And I've always been very pleased with that one because it really does cover all your bases. It's got the rainbow flag across the top. It's got religious symbols in the middle. It's got the American flag at the bottom too, I think this is well done. It's a way to do it. I'm just trying to say it's not the only way, but here's what at least one other town has done. And a number of towns have just called Glover up and said, can we stick that out front? And they're like, here's the PDF, print off all you like. So ours is the ones proposed for virtual racial equity is kind of in keeping with that idea of making it more than just Black Lives Matter, making it more accepting and open. Okay, is there anything else, members of the board, of this time? Any other thoughts or questions? Because we do have public comment. And if no one else, it looks like no one else has anything. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, I'm not trying to prevent anybody from discussing anything at any point. So if somehow y'all were interpreting what I was saying that way, it was incorrect. The thing I had a problem with was I see I called Josh today to ask him what the proposal was, and he told me A, that you wanted to change the content of the sign, and B, you wanted to change the duration from 3 months to year round. And the second point is what struck me as odd, because it seems to me that that's a point that should be communicated to the public before you discuss it in the meeting. And if Josh knows it and Jay knows it and you all know that, how come I had to call the town office to find that out? Is that out of line to expect that detail be included in the warning for tonight's meeting? I don't know, maybe it's not. But it just seems like it's a major policy change, and as such, you should give the public adequate warning to get the details and be prepared to discuss it when you bring it up. That's it.
I agree with you on the subject of the time span, because that is a net change. And
That is a reasonable point.
it is a reasonable point. And the people here in the room are nodding as well. So I think it would be in order for us to bring this back up and tell the town, we're considering putting it up for a year. What do you think?
So I think an appropriate way to do that, if I remember how we did this previously, we literally had the resolution, draft resolution posted with the agenda. So it was clear what we were talking about. So if we're talking about extending the duration, I think that would be the appropriate approach to draft a revised resolution and have that posted with a future agenda, or then it's just clear. And back to the design, I do not remember designs being part of the approval. It's certainly not part of the document, that the Black Lives Matter flag or sign as discussed on X date or approved on X date, even though I also agreed that it's appropriate for the select board to see it and approve it, whatever it is.
My memory is the sign and the flag were presented. This is what we want to display. But there was, my memory was, there was never a specific linking of the sign and the flag to the document.
And the resolution uses the phrase a Black Lives Matter sign, not the Black Lives Matter sign, which for construction leaves one with the impression that it might not have been specific.
Okay, we have two hands up. I'm going to call on June first and then Mary. June, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say that I agree with Ian and what you've just discussed about the time frame, because I did not know that based on reading the agenda, and I think people would like to know that. Also, we just saw two designs. One that Richmond Racial Equity is proposing, and the other one that Jay brought up. And I think if there is going to be a discussion of the sign and a change in the resolution regarding time frame, I think it would be a great idea to share these two options with the option of other people proposing ideas as well, just so that this can be a community conversation.
Okay. Mary, go ahead.
Very cool. I hope everyone can hear me. If you all are proposing to make this a year-round thing, how about we make another change and it's all lives matter? Because if you're suggesting, and I brought up at the time when this was presented, what the Black Lives Matter website talked about, getting rid of the family unit as it is, a lot of other things that were Marxist in nature, and it was professing Marxism. So if things have changed, that's a big surprise. I know the website has changed, but I also take minor exception to asking to put a sign out saying ban abortion, because I have come before this board several times asking for a sign that says abortion stops a beating heart. That is not anti-abortion. That too is a fact. That is a fact, like all lives matter. So if there's a consideration to make this year round, consider making it all lives matter. Because suggesting that only Black Lives Matter is a little late. Thank you.
I'm going to briefly comment. I've always basically felt like there's an implied comma to Black Lives Matter too, but unfortunately they went, well, not unfortunately, many people understand this, but Black Lives Matter is not exclusive of all lives matter. It's just saying that Black lives do matter. It's not saying that all lives don't. But that's just Jay First speech. Chris.
I pretty sure what I have is hay fever, but I'm wearing this just in case it's a cold. Yeah.
So as the creator of the original Black Lives Matter sign and the person who proposed to the board 5 years ago, I think.
5 or 6.
Yeah, 2020.
Years ago that the town display it. I just want to speak to some of the points that Mary brought up. On the 24th of April, the New York Times printed an update on the situation with police killings in the United States. Now, I think we all remember very well what happened to George Floyd, who was murdered by Derek Chauvin by being kneeled on for 9 minutes as he protested and said that he could not breathe. Derek Chauvin was then convicted by a jury of his peers and sent to prison. Unfortunately, since then, the number of killings by police in the U.S. has not decreased. And that's all killings of which most of them are by guns of armed people, which unfortunately armed clashes with police are part of the U.S. history. But still, killings by police of unarmed people like Mr. Floyd also have not decreased. And the racial disparities of those killings have not decreased. If you are a Black person in America, you are 3 times more likely to be killed in an unarmed confrontation with a police officer than if you're white. If you're Native American, you're even more likely to be killed in that kind of confrontation with a police officer. These are very big, very deep problems, and my belief in bringing it forward is the only way that they get changed is if people finally say enough, and good people step forward and just say, this is something that we care about and that we're not going to countenance any further. And that was my intent. And I am grateful to the board for listening to that and acting on it. And I fully support Richmond Racial Equity and their proposal. I think it's appropriate for these things to change as time goes along, but the problem hasn't changed. And I just want to let you know that as a concerned citizen, I still have those same concerns, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Patty, would you like?
I think that we're mixing.
State your name first.
My name's Patty Breshett, and I think we're mixing things up a little bit. I think the proposal that Bonnie just read to you is we would like to make the sign more beautiful and more inclusive. And it sounds as though we're not talking about timeframes. We're not talking about timeframes. We already have a time frame. We can put with that time frame, we can put the other Black Lives Matter sign up on June 19th.
Mm-hmm.
We already have permission to do that for 3 months. Our proposal is that we have a local artist who's come up with a design that we think is much more pleasing. So the question before you right now from us is, can we begin painting and put that sign up on the 19th? Or would you prefer that we put up the black and white sign? I think that's really where we're at right now. If at another time, if we want to talk about increasing the length, as you said, Caitlin, let's have another meeting about that.
Mm-hmm.
The question right now is, we're talking about making it prettier.
Right.
And more inclusive.
And more inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's sort of, what's the board feel about that?
What's the will of the board? Does anybody have a motion or anything to make? Do we feel we need a motion, or do we feel that the existing language adequately covers it and We see no reason to change it and to basically give a implied go-ahead. What would we like to do?
It would seem to me, Jay, the middle course is by consensus, say, do we accept this as the Black Lives Matter flag
Fine.
as represented in the previous resolutions? Sign, sorry, yeah.
And Mary, go ahead.
I just want you folks to know that this little black lady picking cotton is my great grandmother. So I guess for all these years I've been passing, so this is not something I'm not familiar with. So I've had my great grandmother's picture prominently displayed in this room over here for as long as I've been able to decorate, and I did that with your permission. But I think it's important that all lives matter. It's important that abortion stops a beating heart. So if you're going to allow the sign to continue for 3 months or whatever, I'm going to either presenting a formal petition that you all have to answer to, or I'll be bringing a formal lawsuit against the town. I've had somebody volunteer to take the case. So you just need to make a change. All lives matter. That's not so much. Thank you.
Mary, what was your great grandmother's name?
We always called her Babja.
Okay.
That was, I didn't know her personally,
Oh, okay.
but this is my
Yeah,
great-grandmother.
these days, I know a couple of people who have great grandfathers still alive, so you never know these days. I didn't know if you'd. But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Surprise.
If only you knew what lurks in my family tree. No. Okay, so the thought was by consensus, say this looks good for this year. Let's discuss the time frame in another meeting. Is that what I'm hearing?
The only thing I'd say with that, I think that the wording is inclusive to be able to have it move forward. And I would like it to be very clear in writing, moving forward, that we as a board are putting our voice out there to say that we want to also include a pride flag, an inclusivity flag, and the broader community recognition. I think that if we don't do so at some point, and maybe that doesn't have to happen right now because it's broad enough, but if we make it more specific, then it showcases the will of the board and the voice of the board that we are specifically putting that there for a reason that can't be removed.
Okay.
So Jay, it strikes me for clarity, picking up Caitlin's point here, it one approach would be to come up with a second amendment to the initial 2020 resolution that speaks to those elements, as well as if we choose to extend the time frame. And that we could do that as an attachment to a future meeting for discussion and motion.
Yes, and I don't think that we should stop the time frame if there's a sensitivity around painting, because it takes time to make art, so.
I guess I just want to say, if you're gonna want to come back at the next meeting, that is.
I don't
Every
think
day
we have
until
to.
June.
Oh, well, I thought that's what Caitlin was saying, she wanted an amendment to the resolution to talk about the design.
I want an amendment to the resolution to encompass all of the words that, or all of the message that we'll be putting on there, and the current also covers that, just not as specifically, which is why we're kind of openly talking about like it could.
Instead of saying a Black Lives Matter sign, a Black Lives Matters, just spitballing a Black Lives Matter / inclusivity sign.
Right, and you would vote on that at the next meeting, but you're saying. I mean, it would have to be amended and we can't do that tonight. So that would be at the 16th. But I think maybe is what you're saying, they could probably get going on the design with the fairly safe assumption that you're going to approve it at the next meeting.
And under the current phrasing.
The current, yeah.
They're good to anyway. We're just trying
You're
to
just
make
trying
it,
to clarify.
we're just trying to
To
clarify
clarify
it
it.
because.
Yeah,
So that it's covered in the future, if that is.
making the resolution clearer.
Penny?
I just want to be clear. So are you approving this design, right?
Yes,
And I mean, can we just say that? And
Yes.
we'll get painting
yes.
or
Right. I think what Caitlin's
And
point
then
is,
you're
let's
gonna-
cover our bases going forward.
make sure it's all clear?
Yes.
Yes, to put it, yes. So the current resolution that's in place covers the design that you have proposed, and we are all aligned to that design, as I'm hearing. And at the future meeting, we will visit on timeline and either with or separately from the making it more specific, because right now it is broad enough where we can change the design. And I want to make sure that we are putting that sign out there very purposefully and that we're creating a resolution around the words that are included in the community that's included.
So tonight we're saying that the new sign is okay. And we think that, we don't think that,
Because the language already says you can.
we don't think the resolution precludes you from doing that, but we want to clean the resolution up to cover.
Okay, Bonnie?
Thank you. Appreciate that. I would love for you to just consider as you're moving forward, and this is obviously not something to talk about tonight, but at a future time, whether we want Richmond to express its values around this for only 3 months out of the year, or might we want to be inclusive for 365?
Anything else, Josh?
So I guess for the next meeting, you want an amendment to talk about a sign that talks about pride, all are welcome here, and Black Lives Matter. Do you want to include changing the time frame to 12 months, a draft of that, or do you just want to focus on the design for now and do 12 months later, or even address it at all? To your call.
I am open to the will of the board. I'm agnostic, so long as it's the way the board wants.
I think we should, if we're having discussion about amending the sign, we should talk about the timeline at the same time.
We could do two separate motions. You know,
That's what I think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it could be two separate amendments. That's actually an easy way to do it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for speaking up. Ian, thank you. I think in the end, we did get some consensus there. And I hope you will come to the next meeting and share your opinion as well. And Mary's not here. Okay, we're going to move on to our next agenda item. Our next agenda item is an update from the Andrews Community Forest Committee on the progress of updates to the town management plan. And we have a number of people here, Wright and Ian and Brad.
Elliot sent you an email, a map. Would you be able to put that up?
I'm going to bring up the map.
Did you just send it to me recently?
Yep, tonight.
Okay, perfect. Easy.
There's the train.
Thank
It's a
you
little
for
late, though, it's
continuing to persist.
David, it's a little late.
It is.
Yeah.
It's 4 minutes late.
You want me to speak? Would you like to start? Would you like to answer questions?
Start introducing yourselves for the.
Yeah, so I'm Ian Stokes. I'm one of two co-chairs of the Andrews Community Forest Committee.
I'm Wright Preston, the current other co-chair, and we've been rotating the second co-chair every 3 months. Ian is the standard bearer co-chair, and we've to give Ian some relief, we've been working with co-chairs.
If I could just mention one reason that I prefer this arrangement is my hearing is very difficult, my hearing is very impaired actually. So please accommodate that so that I can hear what everyone has to say.
Okay, so go ahead and I've read the memo, but the people at home watching later may not have. So could you kind of sum up what you told us in the memo?
Would you like to provide a summary or would you?
Yeah, we submitted a two-page memo, which is in your packet. And the first page is a text summarizing the challenges that we've been addressing and the progress we've been made, and recognizing that it was in February that the select board requested that we come back with a progress report, including a draft management plan. So the first page of our memo summarizes that. The second page, I'm sorry, there are two pages of
We're
text.
working like hell and bring you up here.
And then following that, a table which summarizes the current structure of the management plan and where we stand in terms of revising and we hope finalizing those different sections.
So we've been meeting twice a month, Mondays for twice a month, and for 2.5 hours. We generally meet 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. Tonight was our special mid-month meeting. We met for 2 hours. We are the most, it's all fun, but the most difficult sections are the recreation section and the ecological section, because in the past, they have been somewhat at loggerheads. Well, we've been working as a committee and then most recently as a 3-person working group, working through those 2 sections. And we're at a point now where I asked this evening, what percentage of completion are we with the recreation management plan? And we're at about, recreation includes forest. It's the human aspects of the forest. We're at about 85% completion. We brought up a new topic that we need to, within recreation, we need to develop a trail development process. So if someone requests a trail, we need to have parameters. So I'm going to move that 85% back to 75. And then on the ecological side, we're at about 75% as well. So we're making very good progress. And we think we will have a Andrew's management plan that will be available fully, all the sections for your review in August. And there'll be further steps that are involved in that, is that we want input at that point from the Conservation Commission and the Trails Committee. And then if it's the pleasure of the select board, we're going to look for an RFP to have somebody, hire somebody to polish the whole thing so that it's a well-written document that then can be supported.
If I could just amplify on how Wright started his summary. He pointed to the difficulty of addressing this issue of human recreation and ecology and conservation, and those 2 parts are clearly are strongly emphasized in the easement, which of course is our governing document, really. So the easement emphasizes those 2 aspects, but doesn't entirely define how each would be valued or taking precedent if needed, one over the other. So I think so that's one of the challenges that I think Wright was alluding to.
I had hoped that maybe you couldn't find it with.
No, I found it. I'm just was waiting for you to
Just going to
get to it.
Just wanted to show the map we sometimes forget about, but we're updated on this evening. It is a map that shows natural features and it shows human features. And the squiggly dark lines are existing trails. Some, like the Vast Trail, needs improvement on the east side because there are some pretty wet sections, but it just shows that the forest does have a trail system. I drive by it a couple times a day and there are cars in the parking lot, and people are using it. And I think when we complete the management plan, it will, and new signage, and we can work on trail stewardship of maintaining the existing trails and upgrading trails. It will be more appealing to the public. And maybe other members of the committee have comments, if that's the pleasure of the chair.
Absolutely. Anybody, Brad, or I don't.
Did a great job for me. I guess I'll just say really quickly, the working on that committee and the last couple of months has been so different from before. We really have made considerable progress. Wright's numbers of 85 and 75% are probably address more of just the sheer volume of words than the tough parts. I think we've gotten past some classic sticking points that have stalled us in the past. And I think it's kind of downhill run right now. That's it. Thank you. Thanks for the time tonight.
If I may, just one other brief comment that you may be aware that there's been substantial turnover of membership of the committee over the past several years. At this point, we have a very, I believe, competent and actively engaged group of individuals who have expertise and knowledge and are bringing that to this process. And of course, that's a substantial strength when we have achieved that through the people who have volunteered for the committee.
And we're grateful for the work you're putting in and that you have put in and that you'll continue to put in. So you've heard we're 75 to 85% ready for a polish and presentation. Do you all have any questions about any particular part of it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We stand ready.
Well, I won't say bated breath because that's a cliche, but I know we're all looking forward to this.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And appreciate all the effort, past, present, and future.
Thank you.
Are dogs allowed up there?
Off leash.
Yeah. With leashes.
Right.
Yes.
You get the reference. We have the kids in here earlier.
We didn't know they were, we.
Oh, a whole kids group came in here.
Way downstairs.
Yeah, a whole kids group came and said, we need a dog park. We need a dog
all
park.
right.
They suggested in the woods.
They actually, there were
Your trails.
two components. One was a fenced-in dog park and also a hiking trail where dogs could go off leash.
Then they finished off our cookies.
Well, I'm just telling you what they said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. Good luck with the rest of the night.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank everybody who's presented so far. Our next item on the agenda requires a little tiny bit of legal explanation. Sometime back, a few meetings back, we opened a public hearing to consider approving amendments to the Richmond zoning regulations. And Keith Oborn, our Director of Planning and Zoning, is here with us to pointing at yourself like, I'm Keith. No, you're definitely Keith. We opened the hearing, we discussed certain parts of it, we gave some direction to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission has met and worked and has come back to us. Now, we have the meeting, the zoning commission, the public hearing never closed last time. We continued it. I asked Josh if we needed a motion to kind of declare it open, and he said, basically, no, it's still going. It was going the whole time. But we will need, when they're done presenting, there is a document in the packet that is specifically about this. It does have motions specific to it. So if we're all pretty much logged in. When the time comes, you may want to have that memo open. But in the short term, though, Keith and Virginia Clark is chair of our planning commission. Go ahead and tell us what's what.
Well, I did provide a memo with the help of the planning commission chair on this. Just thought I'd say that. And we're pretty much handing this to you on a silver platter to a certain extent. I mean, obviously you need to develop the wording that you need for the motion. We did give you some scenarios. Those are not written in stone. Discuss. It is my hope that you folks have looked over this. It's been discussed to a certain extent ad nauseum. I think we're in a good place right now. The motions are specific to two things. One is 512, which is the PUD, which we have promulgated for you and supplied. So
For the people listening at home, can you tell us what a PUD is?
A PUD is a planned unit development. It's a type of development that allows for clustering, for the use of infrastructure, particularly, with the hope of conserving land at the end of the day. There's other PUDs. You can have commercial and mixed use, and residential. Those are the three basic PUDs. But we've laid this out in order. When you go to do the motions, if you are ready to do the motions, you would, as indicated, you would close the public hearing because you're going to have to send this back to the planning commission to promulgate which is a substantive change, which then requires per statute to warn another public hearing after you do that. And then we've put that down there for you also. So really, I open it up to the board at this point on what are you thinking about density? What are you thinking about the scheme that we have presented, scheme in a positive way, not in a negative way. I shouldn't say scheme.
Bring up the two scenarios.
And there's two other sections that are part of this. And that is the residential density program, which I was alluding to, and affordable housing, 615 and 616 respectively. We're here to answer any questions you may have, and I do.
Well, let's review them a little bit, because people watching this later or at home may not have had a chance to read all of these. Here in the memo that Josh is showing, we've got two scenarios here, and then if we scroll down a little bit, there's scenarios 3 and 4. Scenario 1 would increase the base density to 24 units per acre, and retain the proposed density bonus program, which would bring the allowed total residential density to 30 units if Buttermilk used the developer in the Jolina Court area. If they use all of their bonus units, that would be a total of 90 units for the whole project. Buttermilk might stick with 50 units for building number 2 if we opt into 1B, which we'll be discussing later. But 1B briefly is opting into a program that allows us to set aside some provisions of Act 250 for certain situations. Or we could not do 1B and have a larger building 2 consisting of 70 remaining units, which might be tricky. Option 2 is just increase the base residential density to 24 units, no bonus program. Depending on whether we do or do not opt into 1B, that could affect things. Keep on going down. 3, if we wanted to have increased base density and retain the proposed density bonus, but have less than 90 total units, we could do that. 20 units per acre and retain the bonus, allowing a total density of 24 per acres. That would let them have 72 units back there if they used all their bonus units, but they could still have 60 if they didn't use the bonus units. And then number 4, the planning commission alternative, in which case they could have 40 units in building 2, assuming 6 units in building 1, if they utilized all the bonus units, or 25 units if they didn't, for a total project density of 20 units or 15 units, depending on whether the current building design was used. Obviously, there's a lot built in here. So, board, what are your thoughts about this? Bart, I know you've had some ideas.
Well, did we want to parse it out like the
Yes.
building height allowance? Did we want to deal with that as a question?
I'm happy with it. Shoot.
Well, it may or may not make any difference to these scenarios, so.
Okay.
It may not be something that you want to take up right at the moment, that you might want to take it up as a whole separate question. I think the only scenario that it would really make a difference is if you allowed the 90 units for the total project. Because they might be able to put another story on the same footprint building. Otherwise, they're going to have to make a new design for a building if they have that many units, if they're allowed that many units. So that is a case, if you wanted to go to that degree of density, then you might want to consider the height question. But
Right, so that's one of the questions. Do we want to increase the building height perhaps by 1 floor? And then the next item on the agenda is tier 1B. Do we want to, what's the sense of the board about the height? Just because we allow 1 more unit, 1 more floor, doesn't mean they have to build it. But Bart has been doing some research on, and with your help, about what do the law actually say? Is it a law that we have to have this, or?
Well, I'll just say, I've relied on the advice of the subject matter experts over time, and we were told clearly at a point in time, you can't go any higher than this. Cross this line.
Because the ladder wouldn't reach the windowsill.
And so that we were told that, I don't know, on numerous occasions, if I remember correctly, David.
And we took them at their word.
And apparently that is not true.
That is
So-
not, based on Dave Rue's, opinion on the subject. It is not true. Zoning is separate from the Division of Fire Safety. That doesn't mean the Division of Fire Safety can't come down the pike and say, no, you can't do that. They can, but I would certainly, if you were to increase the height restriction, up to 45 or 50 or whatever you wanted to do. I mean, the key thing is to make sure that it meets all fire and safety codes.
Right.
That is the bottom line there, but they are separate. There is no limitation in zoning with regards to height.
So
I know lots of people are jumping in saying what the truth is. I'm just telling you the oral and policy history of this town, where we were told clearly on multiple occasions, you can't go any higher than this. We now are told a different story, that you can go higher than that.
If you're sprinklered.
Well,
Meet
I
all the
don't-
requirements, all the fire safety.
that's where I'm gonna go. I think it's more than just sprinklers, but
Yeah.
the logic before was about the ladder, and it's not about the ladder.
Okay.
In spite of our having been told that on numerous occasions.
Ladder, the thing with rungs, not the thing that comes before the former. After the former.
LADD or not LATT or
Not even that coffee.
T or I can't see.
Okay, Adam, as somebody who has a stake in this industry, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Keith's synopsis that he gave, and Dave Rue's interpretation is correct. And I think that what ensures that this is all safe, the distinction is, we have no fire code in Richmond.
Right.
But that's not accurate for commercial buildings. Every commercial building, including an Airbnb, a single family, requires a state construction permit and a fire permit. That is a new-ish thing. So any commercial or rented building requires that. And so I think the important distinction to make is that this is not saying we need to have extra codes to make this happen. It is to say these codes are in place and they are already enforced by experts in our state. And so we are deferring to that. And so that is the case that was always the case for any 4-unit or bigger building in Vermont. Those have always fallen under the jurisdiction of State Fire Marshal and Department of Public Safety. And they are pulling that down slowly. And so single family homes, owner occupied single family homes, are viewed as like the holy grail of you can endanger your own family and do whatever you want. And the other end of that is 4 units and higher, where you are subject to the full jurisdiction of Vermont Vermont Department of Public Safety or whatever, fire marshal. And so that in between there is gray area, but basically how it sits now, there is no scenario where someone can legally build and occupy and get a full CO for a commercial or rented building and not have gone through a review process with the state fire marshal. And so I think that's the important thing, is that if we did this, we wouldn't be saying, go ahead and do whatever you want. We would be saying, go ahead and do whatever the state fire marshal allows you to do. And they follow NFPA 1 and 101 to whatever date. So I think that's what's lost there.
Yeah, I would say in the past, things have been siloed. I mean, that's the issue is there was no cross-pollination or communication between the Division of Fire Safety and any particular town.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you had your own building code department, i.e. Burlington and South Burlington, that falls under their regulations, because they have the professionals in place that are certified to do that. So that's where we're at here. There is no prohibition. You can increase it. Then it would come down to what protocols does my office need to put in place to ensure that the developer.
Just to verify that they have done that process.
Yeah, it doesn't get waylaid after a decision of, the fire marshal said, no, you can't do that, after the DRB said yes. I would want that front ended before it goes to the DRB for review.
Sure.
So.
And then, I mean, so that makes sense to me from the perspective of the fire department. It also makes sense as I'm not a developer, but having worked for a developer or in construction doing these types of projects. That's how it works in almost every town, except for towns that have opted out and have their own code enforcement. So Burlington, South Burlington,
Barry, Rutland,
Winooski has now opted out as of like 2016 or something. So there's various towns that are not in line with Richmond. Even Williston hasn't opted out. Williston still relies on the state fire marshal. So like the magnitude of town that we're talking about here is Richmond would never do that on the current trajectory. It would be a huge sink of resources. We wouldn't want to do that.
Well, in addition to opting out, we would then have to do our own enforcement.
Yeah, we would opt out of
We
state
have to have a
enforcement
cutoff.
and we would have to prove that our code is at minimum of the state and we had the ability to enforce it. So that we just don't have the means to do that. But, I mean, I don't see any reason we wouldn't stick to this for a safety perspective. If it's for an aesthetic perspective, that's a fundamentally different conversation. And I don't have opinion. I don't really have an opinion on that.
And-
Some of the most iconic buildings in Richmond are taller than the height, so.
So the town attorney, Dave Rude, did have, it seemed to me in his letter, a concern that the town would fail somehow to make sure that the state permit was,
I guess that, most
the-
towns don't view that as on the town. I mean, so when you get a CO for these buildings, like the town CO isn't the driving factor. Like when I'm on a construction site, the town CO is like, I call Keith, I get the CO, and then I'm like hammering on the state inspectors. They are significantly harder to track down, and they often want to see your town CO before they'll give you a CO. And this insurance company, they don't care. The bank doesn't care what the town says. They want to see the state stuff.
The CO is a certificate of occupancy.
right, but
Yes.
to make sure that there is,
Yeah.
that there
Right.
is a
So it
CO
kind of-
from the fire,
It's kind of done.
fire and safety.
It's kind of done the opposite in practice where the state verifies everything and they provide it directly to the bank and the insurance agents. Like you wouldn't, so when I was working for Negley and Chase and we do like a big project, I wouldn't get the CO and all these paperwork and forward it to those places. They would have like laughed at me and been like, I need it certified from the agency that issued it. So the state fire marshal on a letterhead has to sign it and send that directly to them. Because it's a many $million project. And if that falls through and it's not marketable, it's not like a single family home where they can kind of like sell it. Like, so there's a lot more on the back end, I think, that exists that the towns in Richmond and a lot of small towns don't have oversight into, which I'm not saying is how it should work. I think that that's fundamentally flawed. But I mean, I think Keith's point, ensuring that they are working with an architect and an engineer ahead of time is the important part, but I don't know how as a DRB you would have the expertise to really verify that those designs would pass the state fire marshal. It's kind of on them to say, like, hey, that this needs to happen, have at it.
They would have to do some due diligence
Yeah.
front end wise. Obviously, they wouldn't have the approval in hand to go to the DRB, but in order to get a CO from my department, they would have to have that Division of Fire Safety sign off.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess
That's our
and that's up to your comfort level, I guess, right? I mean, at some point as a developer, that's kind of the risk you're taking.
It is.
So I think there's a little bit of that. We allow them,
Thing going on.
let them take the risk, and it's on them to hire the experts they need to ensure that it happens. I guess it doesn't seem like this isn't a problem that would pop up like a first time one-man show developer, because it's not like a single family home. It's like it's much bigger.
But long story short, if we wanted to bring things kind of back to where we were. At the last meeting, we asked them, could you bring up the other document, the one that was the red line document? 3D2.
In today's packet, okay.
Yeah. So
12-2.
512.2. So yeah, if you can make that not minuscule.
Yeah, so this is the question that you asked us to address in the immediate time frame.
Right. And it's fairly
Was,
same.
shall we remove some of the commercial requirement from building one? So in case they were thinking that they wanted to get on with that, we could start doing that. Well, we hope that it will be approved all of a packet with the density issue as well. But this is the suggested language for changing the commercial requirement in building one.
I would add that 20% is 900 square feet, which is the size of that. It's actually 19.7% is what it comes to, the existing 900 square foot front office on building one. So that's where the 20% comes from.
Yeah, and the percentage was felt to be a better way to describe it than the footage.
So this is what they've currently brought to us. And as Keith has said, we would have to close this hearing, and then the final version would have to be discussed and voted on in a subsequent area.
Yes, I hope that you can also get the density issue squared away, so we do this as one package.
Right, so that first assignment for tonight is to say, what kind of density are we interested in, and do we want to retain a density bonus program?
I'm partial to the density bonus program. I don't think that the developer has expressed interest in using it, and I think that it would, I don't know what the threshold, their threshold would be to get it to the point that it is beneficial to make them use it. I don't think we can. If I had my way, which I obviously do not, I know, I would make them put in some type of rent controlled units because they're fundamentally, I know they're providing something to our community in housing, but it's not housing that is owned by people. It's not housing that builds wealth for anyone in the community except for them. And so they're basically giving housing to us, saying they're doing us a favor, and then pulling cash out of our community. And so fundamentally we do need this housing, but also this isn't like an altruistic thing in and of itself. And also there's a bunch of studies that are showing with the kind of integrated rental pricing back ends, like up to 70% of rental units in the US are priced based on algorithms that do not limit vacancy to the classic 3 to 5%. There's lots of markets that will have 10 or 12, 15% vacancy with higher rents. And that's more profitable. So there's a strong, my opinion is there's a really strong case to be made that we can't in all markets build ourselves out of this. And we don't know that Richmond and Vermont isn't one of those. So if I had my way, I would say we would force them to do some small amount of some type of rent controlled units. I know that's unpopular. I know that we will get pushback from both the developer and anyone who thinks that we can just build our way out of it. But I think that having this integrated, highly integrated rental pricing where multiple programs use the same back end, all the same data, has enabled this to kind of be a cartel on rental housing. So I think that the market has fundamentally shifted, and our opinion of it hasn't really, our view of it hasn't caught up. That's just my rambling. I don't think that that'll get traction.
So I'm suggesting inclusionary zoning, which basically is like a bonus program, only there are requirements that you have to do it.
Versus
We have considered that and felt that it was a little bit beyond our capability right now to institute an inclusionary zoning program. So
is there a threshold where we, instead of mandating, we incentivize so strongly that they take it up? I mean, that's we kind of have a carrot and a stick, right? So like if we make the carrot so good and chocolate coated,
We attempted to do.
crack on it.
well, that was, yeah, exactly. That's what we attempted to do. There's no known
Yeah, I guess, and we
balance
we aren't in a
point, as
position.
far as I know.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it would be different for every project, and it would be different for every stage.
So rest of the board, you've heard that he likes the bonuses. What do y'all think about the bonuses? Incentives to do the very things we'd like to see them do.
It would be nice, but it would be hard to implement.
The bonus program would be hard to implement.
Well, the density bonus doesn't require them to do anything. It's just,
That's true.
it's an option. If they don't want to do it, they don't do it, and they build ostensibly fewer
That's
units.
true. Yeah.
And we've promulgated, so, I mean, we've put oversight into the law also. It's not the strictest of strict, but there is oversight language in it.
And basically, the residential density bonus as just a bonus program was to introduce this into our zoning thinking, possibly leading eventually towards being able to have an inclusionary zoning program that requires you to do this.
Yeah,
But this is like a first step.
and another step of the density bonus program, it's not just Jolina Court. I mean, it can't be, that's spot zoning. So, it's townwide where water and sewer is located.
Yeah, I think when we had spoken last time, I don't think anyone didn't like the bonus program. I think we all thought the bonus program was a great idea. And because of where this property is located and the zoning that's right next to it, and that was kind of like two pieces to the conversation. I like the bonus program in general. I think it's important to have something to incentivize builders to build units that will accommodate more people and a diverse set of people. And I think that's a separate conversation from what we had before, but I like the bonus program as the bonus program.
Okay, I like the bonus program. Anybody not like the bonus program? Okay, so then the other way to slice it, when we're looking at our proposals, we could say increase base density to 24, keep the bonus program. That would allow us to have 90 units for the whole project. Okay, item 2 says no bonus program, so we skip that. Item 3 says, keep the bonus program, but for some reason are we averse to having 90 units? Is there anybody here who sees 90 units as a deal breaker? I'm not hearing.
Personally, I think that the difference in magnitude between 72 and 90 is
marginal,
pretty marginal at best, I would think.
So if we go back to option 1, let's all focus because this is what it sounds like we're wanting. Increase
90 on top of each other.
So we're gonna build a space needle on it.
Wow.
I don't know, rotating.
It's great for
The height allowance.
awesome for impervious surface.
Okay, so it sounds like we're looking at is item 1, which is to increase the base density to 24 units per acre, retain the bonus program. And then there's various ways Buttermilk might choose to implement that, but in a nutshell, it's that first sentence. Increase the height by 1 story, which we've, I think, already agreed. Increase the base density by 24 units and retain the program. And then our next item on the agenda is to do, whether we can do tier 1B or not.
I agree. I think one thing I would say is, would it be, this is I guess a Virginia and Keith question, would it be possible to make the increase in height contingent upon the project being a project that would be reviewed by the Vermont Department of Fire Safety or something like that? Well, I mean, theoretically, someone could build a single family house and build it like 60 feet tall and it would skate out of that. So I think that would.
So the height issue is not on the table. It wasn't promulgated or put before you.
Okay.
Oh.
So that's not on the table.
Well, it was actually scroll outs right there.
Well, those are questions that we presented.
Gotcha.
That's not the same as
So,
putting before us.
Yeah,
Okay.
the height issue is not on the table at this point. That's for another time.
Okay.
Like the next.
But we are positively.
Okay.
Well, I think your next hearing, right? You're gonna come back for a hearing in August. That'll be about density and residential on the first floor.
Yes.
And that'll be all that is, and then they'll come back with a height.
Yeah, it's just circular thing.
There's so many times we're coming back, I lost track. Okay.
You all get your punch cards, right?
I'll do my best. I'll do my best to remember that.
That's cool.
Okay. So are we
Something
going?
about it being approved by.
Yeah, I don't know how that works, or I would think that we wouldn't want to like just allow it. I do think that it's important to not just allow it like blanket.
It is baked in. It's not specifically saying fire safety. It is baked in. It says state permits.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. So we're going to.
We could reinforce it by,
We can,
since
absolutely.
nobody's used to it in this town.
But that's a conversation for another hearing.
Okay, so if we're going with option 1, heights are not on discussion right now. So option 1, increase the density of 24 units per acre and have the bonus program.
That goes to 30.
That goes to 30. I have misplaced my motion stuff.
Right here.
Okay. So, I had it up the whole time.
I guess,
Public comment, I think.
So public comment, right.
Sorry.
Okay, so Patty, go ahead.
There was a front porch forum, I think it was Duncan said, or somebody who's ever in charge of all of this said, come to the meeting and because we'd like to hear community input on all of this.
Okay, well.
So here's some community input. I agree with Adam that we do need inclusionary zoning. If we're going to use the density bonus, I would make it tougher, as tough as you can to make them do it. And my other concern about housing in Richmond is that, as far as I know, the Buttermilk building, it seems as though although they're really tiny and
They don't even have a closet.
they're like a little studio. So we don't really have the big problem we have in Richmond is that we don't have housing for young people or beginning families. And so I don't know, I'm not sure how it benefits us, honestly, to get 90 studio apartments. I'm not sure how that are pretty pricey. I'm not sure how that's helping Richmond, honestly. So I guess I would just say, I think inclusionary zoning has worked in many places. And I also think that if there's any leverage that we might have on these folks, which it seems like we do, because they can't build anything and make any money unless you say, yes, you can put new units together. And we'd like to see some units that at least are 2-bedroom units so that we can have
Families.
families. Because Richmond's just gonna be old people, you know, in
Hey.
the future.
Are we all getting old?
Unfortunately,
That.
Okay. Is this getting fun again?
So, hey, I know you're heading in another direction, but
Well, no, we're not.
that's a public comment.
What I was trying to do is get our consensus and then say, okay, now that we know what it is.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. This is a public hearing and we do have quite a few people, or we did have quite a few people on the Zoom. I'm going to open this up to anybody else in the room, of which there are 3 total. And there's also people who may be listening in. Does anybody on the Zoom have any questions or comments about the proposed idea of increasing the density allowed per acre to 24 units, but implementing the density bonus program to incentivize things like affordable and low-income housing? Any questions or comments from the people listening? I see a hand go up. Connie.
Hi there, hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. My name's Connie Van Egan. I live in Richmond. I'm a member of the Housing Committee, which is within the town structure. I want to support the select board moving together on a scenario that has the full amount of units and supports not only the increase to the base density, but to a bonus program. And I want to add to that, as I've learned in the Housing Committee, Richmond has a reputation of not being that great to work with with developers. And one of the things that we know we can do, and this is for a later discussion in the Housing Committee, is make things easier, more streamlined, more successful, be able to move through, at least at the town level, the ability to develop housing in Richmond. Whatever the limitations are in Richmond in terms of real estate, we don't make it easier by making it harder to develop land. And yes, it would be lovely to have developers develop a diversity of housing and programs so that a diversity of people can continue to live and grow and prosper in Richmond. But just because Jolina Court's here up front in front now, they can't solve all those problems. They can help with some of them. And I think I like the conversation more about providing more carrots than adding more sticks. I think we all have to learn how to work together and support each other in developing the kind of community that Richmond has been and hopefully will continue to be. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Connie. Anyone else on the Zoom who'd like to comment? Okay. Anybody else in the room? Chris?
I am not technically a member of the public. I am the co-chair of the planning commission.
Well, you were.
So I just wanted to say all the discussion so far has been about the inclusionary zoning, for want of a better term, or the rental price aspect of this. And there were 3 different
Scenarios.
Well, not scenarios, but 3 different options for increased density. And it would be very helpful to get the select board's input across that spectrum if possible.
So if you recall, just to remind you what those 3 options were to get more units, affordable housing was one. And for each one affordable housing unit, you would get 4 market rate units above and beyond the allowed density. This is because this is the most expensive for the developer. It's in perpetuity, or for 15 years, I think we ended up with, because in perpetuity seemed possibly impossible to achieve for us to remember to do this properly. So you get 4 market rate units for 1 affordable unit. The second option was to put what we were calling accessible or adaptable units, which we started out calling senior units, and they would function as senior units, but they have features of accessibility,
Yeah,
think.
beyond ADA compliant.
Beyond ADA, and then the other features are easy to convert to being accessible. So this is the second kind of most expensive. They just have to put some money into upfront improvements on these apartments. So it's, it's not nearly as costly for them as sacrificing all that revenue for all those years by putting in affordable units. So in that case, you get, for every 2 of those you create, you get 1 market rate unit. So you don't get as many extra units unless but you're still getting those units, which are extra units. And they are suitable for seniors or, other physically limited persons. And then the third option that we allowed was parking, providing public parking. Because we had some, folks who felt that this was probably one of the most important things that we needed in our village was additional public parking. So for every 2 parking spaces, you got 1 additional unit. So, and this is maybe the most problematic of these options, in that if you have public parking, obviously you're allowing more traffic to come and go. And also the town, even though they wouldn't be responsible for these, the developer would be responsible. The town would probably suffer some inconvenience by, if they weren't plowed or something, they would complain to the town, even though it was the developer who was in charge of them. So
what the planning commission did is presented you with a proposal, a policy proposal that's directly reflective of the discussions that we had within the commission. And it's a political proposal because it represents different priorities of the commission members. It is not, however, informed by a detailed cost benefit analysis of the different options. We didn't have the resources to do that. So I just want to take that into account. I ask you to take that into account. And also, as I'm sure you're aware, that the 3 options in the real world, if implemented, all 3 will interact with each other. And as Virginia mentioned, we tried to, balance them some by seeing what would be the easy way for the developer to get the desired level of density at the lowest possible price. We don't know what that answer is. We were basically guessing and putting that out. So am I missing anything on that? I mean, I think it was a long and difficult and productive discussion that we had over a number of months, but I want to make sure that you all are clear on what it is.
and, there's no reason that the density bonus program has to be exactly, if you want to change it, for instance, to make it all affordable, then that's, yeah.
Well, if you make it all
That's up to
affordable,
you.
they just
You
won't
did
build.
Spend a lot of time thinking about it,
Yeah.
but, you're welcome to alter it in any way. And if you think parking is not appropriate, take that out. If you think it shouldn't be all affordable, that's fine. Take the other ones out. So,
And if we want a giant dome built over downtown Richmond,
yeah, go for it.
When's it rotates?
As a matter of sort of process here, when do we take up the density bonus details?
That's at your leisure.
Well, that will be, at the proposal is in front of you that the planning commission has made. So if you want to talk about that at your next hearing, when we're going to approve all of these things, then.
I think that would make sense since it's not really on the table today, but I think the details of that, and I'm not certain on what the right approach is on those 3 different pieces. The first 2 make sense. Parking, I'm still a little fuzzy.
yeah, the thing about parking is right now, residential, you get a flow of cars at the beginning and end of the day. But with public parking, the flow is all the day.
Different.
Yeah.
And the highway department is not crazy about it.
I also think when you have parking at play with the other 2 pieces to it, that you might give like not easier, but you give an alternative that doesn't benefit the housing side of things in terms of expanding units for people who need a lower rent or an accessible unit. And so I wouldn't want to put the parking piece in play and have that be the one that gets leaned on to get more units and then not see the other two, because I think the other two are extremely important. And they're the pieces of the bonus that I really like. The parking, I feel like we could maybe achieve in a different way.
I agree. It's an articulate way to state, I was thinking.
So let's pick that up when the time comes.
Just a couple more things about the parking in case you want to think about it. One is that those parking spaces are very valuable to the developer. So especially when future buildings are being considered. So the developer has definitely expressed a complete non-interest in giving up any of their valuable parking. So that's one thing. A second thing is, one of the other reasons that we considered putting that in, besides the desire of some to have more parking in the village, is we are now restricted to one parking space per unit by new statute, Act 47 on 181. You can only have, in water and sewer areas where residential development is allowed, you can only have one parking space per unit. And some of us were concerned that there were going to be, especially if you have bigger apartments, like 2 bedrooms or even 1 bedroom, you're going to have 2 cars. So there's no way to look like you're doing a workaround without, this was the only scheme that we could come up with actually having extra parking there that might actually take up some of the slack of having extra cars besides 1 per unit. But it's still, a little questionable about whether it's a workaround around the around the statute.
Believe that that was gonna be seen as a workaround. Or we did ask this question.
We did, because, we thought, well, maybe we could have guest parking to take up some of that extra cars that these apartments might be generating, but we can't do that anyway.
So we'll pick up parking and when we revisit the density bonus issue. But back to the math in number 1, remind us what the current base density is.
It's 15 per developable acre.
So the number 1 would go base would go from 15 to 24, and then you could go to 30. And what I've been contemplating, it's actually called out in the chat here. What are the right numbers? We know 15, we know 30. What is 24 the right new base density number, or something other than 24 to create? Because part of the question is, how much of an incentive is there for the density bonus?
Right, well, so we provided you 2 options in our scenarios. One is to go to 24, which matches the base density in the downtown area. So, and that would end up at the same density if no bonus units were taken. So we also provided you, if you wanted to go a little lower, to go to 20, to more like force them, if you want to look at it that way, or encourage them to take up the bonus density units.
Right, chocolate on the carrot.
That's kind of
like 20 to 30.
Kind of what I was trying to articulate.
I mean,
That
the more you increase the base density, of course, the less incentive there is to take the
And the
bonus.
narrower
units.
the ratio between, subsidized units or affordable units and the bonus for that, the less incentive. So if we were to lower the base density, but kind of shoot for the 30 still and do 1 in 10 units or something like that, I mean, we wouldn't get theoretically as many affordable units, but if we got 2 is better than 0.
Yeah, and it's all kind of theoretical.
It is, yeah.
Because we don't know what will be enticing to these developers. Mostly they do not want to have to provide the extra money that is needed to support those, to subsidize those density bonus units.
And I think we've gotten some feedback, and correct me if you think I'm wrong about this, that this will not be, the decisions that are made in this room will not be the determinant on what the final project looks like or the scale of it. It's going to be things like the interest rate for the money that they borrow, whether or not there are tariffs on the HVAC equipment that they need to install, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are playing at the margins a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
You know, labor costs.
Labor costs.
I would also add, don't think of these density increases relegated to one building. There could be multiple buildings on this lot. And I suspect that the developer would utilize that. They would utilize a portion of this. Let's say you do the scenario that you opt in on 1B. They probably won't go to 50. They'll stay right at 50, and that means you'll have a few more left for the other building, and hopefully that can be a mixed-use building, so on and so forth. And the traffic's got to work too. So I don't want you to look at it with blinders on if this is going into one building.
That's a good point.
It's not.
Yeah, but it is an opportunity to make a powerful statement.
There's a hand.
Okay, we got a hand up and I don't have my glasses on.
Mannix.
What's his?
Mannix.
Thank you,
Mannix, please go ahead.
Andrew. Thank you. I'll provide more feedback during the Tier 1B recommendations from the Housing Committee, but I would just like everyone to not lose sight that generally speaking, when we talk about parking density and parking per unit, market dynamics take care of that. If somebody needs 2 parking spaces for a property, they simply will not rent a property that allocates 1 parking space. So the developer, which seems like a bad word sometimes, but the property owner that is building that property will factor that into their considerations on rents. And if you offer fewer parking spots, they'll receive less rent, which makes the property not work. So you could give them 1 unit per space. There's nothing that requires them to do that. They can choose to go that low. Their rents will be lower and the project won't work. So I'll provide more feedback later, but I wanted to add that now while this is under consideration.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, was it?
Andrew Mannix, yep, he's on the housing committee.
Okay, and then Josie.
Of mute. Hi, this is Josie, the developer. So a few things I want to comment on. One, I think what Keith just said was very accurate. There is no intention and there's no commercial reason to put 90 units into one building. That has never been with 1B, the categorization and also other things, we want to keep it below. So just the idea, we have 2 other buildings and it's about long-term growth. I also want to point out there was lots of conversation about affordable units. We've offered for 5 years now affordable units at below market rate existing without incentive, without inclusionary zoning, because that's what we were committed to. And we continue to do that because, yes, we built smaller units that have supported young families and young individuals who've moved in. But then they grow up and they find a girlfriend or a boyfriend and they move into a 1-bedroom unit. And we also have, currently, we have 6 of the 14 units are 2 bedrooms, which actually house several families. And I know that in the next building, what we've planned was to have several units that were actually had backyards, have decks, have patios. Our whole idea was to live up to the goal that was outlined a decade ago in your town plan and also in the housing study, which is a wide variety of properties. And then the only other thing I wanted to point out is a lot of, oh, no, there's one other thing. Parking. Let's just be very clear. Our last permit had 176 parking spaces on the entire development. So if we built out 90 units, we still would have 86 parking spots left. There shouldn't be, we've already oversupplied parking in building 1. And I understand, and we've been with you, and that is why we've oversupplied parking, is that we understand that parking is an issue and we've wanted to collaborate with the town on that. And we've already oversupplied that. So I just want to kind of like reassure that there is no interest in stealing or compromising the parking allocations around that. And we've already oversupplied to the date. And the last thing I wanted to say is around the market conditions is part of the challenge that we've had with some of these density bonuses, which I've given feedback for 2 years, which we've been in conversation with, and based on the 10 years, is this is one of the most challenging market conditions of all time, where the cost of construction has nearly 30% increase since we started this discussion. And even Vermont Finance Housing Agency says projects start, and they're now asking projects that they help fund. They ask for projects to incur and carry 25 to 30% in cost overruns. Because when you start a project and the final financing, when you're closing on the final financing, costs increase. So that's part of the challenge, is that with that huge increase in costs, we can't predict what's going to be a carrot versus a stick. All we know is the stick that has existed for the last 10 years on this property has blocked all development and all construction except for building 1, and has blocked. A carrot, we would love to have more carrots involved, because we actually are committed to actually offering and supporting the housing and not being a cartel that takes money out of the town. So part of it is trying to partner with the town and to make sure that some of the housing crisis that we're feeling in Vermont actually that actually work. But part of the problem is the market conditions. It is about trying to create a project that gets financed and actually goes to fruition. And that's part of our issue. So I just wanted to add that in terms of how some of those things should be. First of all, there isn't a giant building that's going to go up with 90 studio apartments. Our goal is to deliver on, which it always has been, on the town plan, to the housing study, to help Vermont. We are Vermonters. I live 18 miles away, so I'm not very far away, and I'm on the Stowe Housing Task Force, and I'm involved in the state. So that is what we're trying to do, but we're also trying to move forward so that we can provide housing in Vermont, because it's these type, as Connie wonderfully said, it's these type of kind of complex discussions that have created barriers to progress, and it's happening in every single town across the state. That's my piece.
Sure. Josie, that's great. And I didn't realize you guys do the affordable units. I know you've mentioned that, but it always slips my mind. Is that something that like you would have any interest in formalizing to gain a bonus? Is there any threshold there that would incentivize you to do that? I mean, I know that there are financing, I get it. So I'm just curious.
It's the financing. I would love to do it as a human and as a person and someone who's dedicated to Vermont and housing. And it's the number one thing that I talk about and I live and breathe. But if you can't finance that building, I mean, we went through the very complicated, expensive process last year to go for a Vermont Housing Finance Agency. And they told me, you have to increase your rents because you will not be able to cash flow this building. And that was a year ago. And part of the problem is, based on current construction today, what I was able to do in 2018 to 2020 in building 1, the cost of that construction was I think 1/4 of what I would potentially pay. So you imagine that the cost of what that rent has to be. So part of the challenge is, I would love to say that is our goal. That has been my goal from the beginning, and it will remain to be my goal. But goals and aspirations does not make the bank financing work. And I've said that before. And so part of the units that we have in building 1 are always going to be small, because they were also very affordable. And we've worked hard to keep several of those units are still at 70% AMI. And we have 2 bedrooms that are at 80% AMI, because we were able to build it. The problem is about building number in the future building, when the costs of construction are that much higher, where's the income coming from? I mean, just full transparency. Even if we get maximum density, Brenda and I were just looking at it. Would we be able to move forward in today's economy where I could do every single unit at market rate? It's unlikely. Most financing of any housing has to be luxury right now. It's just the cost of construction, which is becoming more challenging because of people, staff, tariffs, all of that stuff, and also financing charges. So financing charges on a future building is double or triple what I was paying. So I'm losing any profitability that would pay for those lost income in the affordable. And so that's been part of the problem that we've tried to communicate, is that the market conditions, if you guys had done this 6 years ago when we first talked about it, that might have enabled us to move forward with building 2, and we would have built at a lower cost. Right now, I just can't commit to it. So Adam, just to explain, just to be saying, I would love
Yeah, that
to,
makes-
I would love to, but I can't get a bank to finance it.
Okay, makes sense to everyone. I'm very grateful for your comments, especially the ones we just heard. Josh, could you bring up 3D1 and go down to the bottom of page 2? Yeah, where it says,
Oh, the motion, yeah. Actually, can I ask
By
a
all
question?
means.
And maybe I'm missing something, so tell me if I am, but you were talking about the density bonus program, right? And we don't have to decide about that tonight, but I thought that is in what you're bringing forward, so that, so,
On the board for.
yeah,
so that has to be decided tonight? Or it would be decided when you
Well,
come
we
back?
need-
Necessarily have to, we'd have to adjust the motion though.
but where it says place revision instructions, we have to have something to place there.
Right, no, but I mean, as far as like you build, one ADA house, you get 2 additional units, like that structure is already in the proposed zoning that's before the board.
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
So
It's in-
maybe I misunderstood. What's that?
It's in the proposal.
Right, but I thought Barb was saying we don't have to decide that, the ratios tonight, or maybe
Aren't we coming back to this again?
no, they're gonna come back with a final draft.
Yeah.
So I think you do have to discuss what are the right ratios tonight so that you guys know what to come back with, right?
Directions to us tonight.
Okay, got
So I just wanted to, okay,
What are the ratios and also if you want the program?
right.
And if you need time to do that, that's fine. We just
Right.
have to adjust the resolution to focus on the removing the commercial and the 20% on the first. Focus on that, get that through, get that promulgated in August.
Which is what we have in the red line document on the other tab.
Yeah, and then.
That's the
so
first floor,
discussion
yeah.
With
Okay.
direction to us.
Says we can always hold another, okay.
But then wouldn't you have to have another hearing at the planning commission at that point? Because you would come back with this one with just the first floor. And then you'd have to have another hearing at the planning commission to come back. So it would just be another layer.
Hearing,
Yeah.
close this public hearing, give the directions, and then I would warn the one for the
First floor.
commercial first floor, and then I'd have to, and then that's it, and we come back here for a discussion. You would have to warn it at the select board level.
For the first floor.
For the second one.
For the second one.
With the second one, wouldn't you, if they do the first floor in the next iteration, right, they come back
The second and fourth, whichever. it is.
and they finalize that. That finalizes this hearing. You would have to then have another hearing at the planning commission to talk about the density bonus program.
That,
Mhm.
you would have to, you
I'm confused.
you need to give us direction tonight.
Right, and if you come back at the next meeting to say, here's first floor, here's total density, here's the bonus, then they can warn a hearing on that and do all that at once.
Yes.
If you come back only with first floor and they warn the hearing on first floor, then when you go back to do density, you have to go back through a hearing at the planning commission to come back.
I think that
Right.
is probably.
So that's where, so it's an issue of timing, I
It is an
think.
issue of timing and it's, it is an issue of timing. It's not.
Yeah, it's whether or not we compromised at your last meeting by calling it phase 1 was to remove the commercial requirement. It was phase 1 of the bigger
Of the whole
picture
package.
of the whole package, but if that's too much to do all at once, we wanted to give you the option of just closing this hearing, voting on the removal of the commercial on the first floor,
Right, the
then
red line
taking some
document.
more time
Right.
to
And then-
figure out the rest of it.
And then the rest of it would have to go through a planning commission hearing and then back through
Okay.
a select board hearing.
So could you bring up the red line
Yep,
document?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last thing to say, I think the sort of policy and real life reality of it is that there's good consensus within the planning commission about phase 1, about that change to the existing project, and also some sense of urgency about it because of the commercial space in the building remaining open. Phase 2 is more complicated, and as we've heard, there's not there's not somebody championing at the bit to develop that right
It's not
now.
a mad rush.
It's not a
Yeah.
mad rush, so there was a reason also in a practical sense for separating the two.
Okay, so if,
Right now, I'm partial to doing all this then and making,
but going with that for tonight. That red line document there. That's what we have agreed on. That's what they came back to us with. And so the motion and the other tab would be do that. And then we would come back with all the other stuff.
I'm partial just, I mean, so from what I've heard from Josie, and I trust what she's saying is accurate, because I've heard this from other people, that I don't think that us getting in the weeds on this, I think we are making a policy statement and not a practical solution.
Okay.
By doing this in current market conditions. So that said, I think that we pick two numbers with and without bonuses in total densities, and we do it tonight and give the planning commission clear direction. I think
we're gonna need to have something succinct and in the form of a motion. So we have to actually write this up. Do you want to bring up a document and we can make you share and you can draft it?
So Adam, you're suggesting that we do it all at once, right?
Yeah, so we would pick option one of right here. We would make a motion that we would select.
But we have to say the bonuses.
To the bonuses, and then we'd also eliminate the commercial requirement on the first floor.
As said in the other document.
As said in the other document. So do that all right
And
now.
you want to go with having the bonus density program the way it is laid out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think there's a lot of room for changing that to meet the kind of conditions and stuff, but I don't get the sense. I think the limitations Josie and Brendan are facing reflect kind of broadly what everyone's facing now. And so I don't suspect that they're going to be able to, or really any developer is going to be able to utilize that program, the current financing market and construction market anytime soon. So I don't know if we need to hash out that.
So you might not need to have that at all.
No, I want to have it because I want to make the statement that that's the values we want to shoot for.
Okay.
And if we need to tweak it later to make it work in 5 years when maybe construction costs less.
Okay, so how do we want to phrase that in English?
Yeah.
So please open a notepad document and share, and you'll be our scribe and we'll draft this.
I'm a pretty bad scribe, Jay.
Yeah, but you're the genius here.
You're still awake.
Really functional genius is that.
Like
a dig.
I'm hurting.
Once you got the document, can you share?
Yep.
And I guess, Keith, do we need to close the public hearing?
Well, we actually, as I
Or do
read
you
it,
want to try to get?
as I read it, we have to close the hearing and specify the instructions, which Adam is
Oh.
about to write.
There you go. Sorry.
Languages and
Good deal.
vision instructions here.
Yes, okay.
To share.
I'm not logged in.
Oh, log in. Good share.
I'm just gonna put it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not logged in.
Just gonna read it. How's that?
Okay, can I pass you my laptop?
There you go. Sure, let's do it. You want me to just dictate it to you?
No.
Or you turn the field.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
So basically, you're going to suggest that we go to scenario one. Is that?
Scenario one, but I'm gonna specify that the bonus density is only for adaptable, is that what we're calling them, units?
It's not.
And affordable units, so no.
And drop parking.
Drop parking.
So that's going to be in your instructions. The planning
Sure.
commission is to rewrite the
Oh.
residential bonus density program.
That's applicable.
Okay.
And it'll basically be your option one, so like that'll be, but I'm gonna try to write that in a motion. Or
No, you know, what? I'm not sure. I'm sharing. Let me stop sharing and then you can share easily. I'm sorry.
Okay, go down.
What? This is a different keyboard, Jay.
Right.
You sure you don't want me to dictate?
I'm enjoying this.
I'm glad I can bring it light in the, move to, so I guess I'm moving to request of the planning commission.
You're giving instructions to the planning commission to revise the proposal.
Yeah, you've already got the first part of this draft motion.
0.9, we're going to increase
There.
the base density to 24 units per acre.
Section 3.9.
Section 3.9, yep. Base density will be increased to 24 units per acre with the total residential density increased to 30 units per acre if the residential density
You're a little ahead of it.
is utilized.
With a total density of up to 30.
And it's 24 units per acre developable. You always have to put that in because this section is written in such a way, but anyway, we can do that. I guess we can fix it.
For a developable acre.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we will know with a total residential density of 30 units per acre. Developable.
Just let the spelling go. We'll fix it at the end.
That is not a QWERTY keyboard?
Yeah.
No.
Thanks, Chris.
Sorry.
I have, yeah. Density.
No pressure.
I hate it when people watch me type. It's the worst. Like, so it's hard.
I'll be typing away and somebody will pop into my office and I'm still composing an email. I'm looking at them and they can't deal with that. They're like, can you either stop typing or?
To put a period there, yeah, and the residential density bonus program should be revised to remove the parking option. And we'll have to,
The
you know,
parking incentive, whatever, yeah.
yeah, the option to have parking spaces. And so we will have to get to that 30 units per acre, we'll have to increase some of the other items. You know, or I guess not. I guess we won't. They can just have more.
Yeah.
Seniors or more. So yeah, we won't have to, we just remove.
It's just
Yeah.
ratios, yeah.
Be revised to remove the park.
And then the last one would be to remove the commercial requirement on,
From 512, yep, to remove.
So we had Boy Scouts there earlier tonight as part of their Weeblos program to observe government in action.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Send them a clip of this video tomorrow to make sure they get the true understanding of.
and you're like, he's gonna speed it up. It's like, circus music. And
Yeah.
It is.
From.
I gave them cookies too. It looked like they needed cookies as
And
well.
then we'll also have to add section 6.16, because that's just taken from the statute. That just says,
Is that
Affordable housing.
yeah, it's affordable housing development,
You get 6.15.
which this is not going to be.
Hmm.
Residential density bonus program is 6.15.
You keep all those numbers straight.
She started studying all this when she was 5. Before she went to vet school, she was going to be a developer.
Is this, are you content that this gives you the direction you need?
We need the 20% on the commercial requirement for buildings fronting, and maybe you could just reference. However you want to write it, you want to write it pristine now, that's fine.
I mean, we'll know what you
I
mean
know what you mean.
with 512, because you agreed to the red line.
So if you say,
basically.
and to remove the first floor commercial requirement as discussed.
As presented, it was in the attachment.
Presented, yep. And
That'll
section,
get us to where we need to go.
Okay.
you should put the section 6.15 goes up with the residential bonus program.
Hotel.
Just put.
Yeah.
Rooms do fly.
Is it happening though? Because I'm not going to believe it until Adam stops typing. 'cause-
We still have to have a vote on the amendment too.
That's true.
Vote on the motion. It could go. We don't have anything final yet. What did Yogi Berra say?
I think another train will go by the time Adam's done typing.
Expert.
It ain't over till it's over. Anything he said.
Yeah, so that's the other thing is.
It's laid out here early.
Oh, is that the new public hearing?
Continue with section 6.16, just the same as it is now. Section 6.16 is the thing that comes directly out of this new statute.
Yep.
that talks about affordable housing developments, which this isn't. But we reference it in the density bonus program, so.
So is it still, we still need to have a new public hearing?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Only
If I say,
Only at the select board level. Because the other, only back to you guys. It doesn't have to go through another public hearing and planning.
right,
Yeah, so they're gonna work on the revisions and then.
Just like you tell us, and then it's gonna come back to you.
okay. So
Okay.
if I were to say per 24 VSA 4442B, I move to close the public hearing and forward the following Jolina Court District revision instructions to the planning commissions. Instructions, I move to instruct the planning committee amend section 3.9 to increase the base density to 24 units per developable acre. Oh, God.
Sorry.
Oh, Jay.
I hit a button
I
and
thought it was Adam.
Let's continue.
Section 3.9 to increase the base density to 24 units per developable acre with a total density of up to 30 units per developable acre if all bonuses are utilized. Residential density bonus program should be revised to include the to exclude the parking bonus option in 6.15 and to remove the first floor commercial requirement as presented from section 5.12. And to continue to implement section 6.16 as per state statute. All right.
Second.
Uh,
Adam, I would love to second.
okay, so we have a detailed motion, which we just heard made by Caitlin Filkins, seconded by Adam Wood. That is this motion plus instructions. Any further discussion?
It does also say here that I need to say the planning commission shall amend the report prepared pursuant to subsection 4441C of this title to reflect the changes made by the legislative body and shall submit that amended report to the legislative body at or prior to the new public hearing, which is a
And
separate
then
motion.
consent to that addition.
Accept.
Okay, any further discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, aye.
Our name. Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Draft motion number 2.
I move to set a new public hearing per 24 VSA 4442B for August 4th, 2025 for consideration to approve the revisions to 3.9 Jolina Court District, 5.12 Planned Unit Development, 6.15 Residential Density Program, and 6.16 Affordable Housing.
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Caitlin Filkins, seconded by David Sander, to set a new public hearing date for August 4th, 2025 to consider the aforementioned revisions. Please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, aye.
Art, I. Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Okay, our next item on the agenda, which is very closely related, is discussion of opting in for the Tier 1B designation, which will provide an exemption from Act 250 for housing projects in an acre served by water and sewer that are 50 units or less and 10 acres or less until 2027. In the packet, we have 2 letters, one from the Housing Committee, one from Planning Commission, taking slightly different points of view on this. And do we still have, Connie is still here. But first, just fill us in for those of you, us watching at home with their bowls of popcorn. What is the Tier 1B program?
So the Tier 1B program was instituted in Act 47 and 181 and brought to life kind of by the Regional Planning Commission to help incentivize the development of more housing. So there is currently in place per statute what's called interim 1B, the exact same program, which allows anybody in a water and sewer district who is developing housing to utilize the 1B provisions up until July 1st, 2027. So keep that in mind. The Jolina Court project will not happen in that time frame. So their interest and the interests of the Housing Committee is to institute the permanent 1B program, which begins on July 1st, 27 and continues through the remainder of the 8 years of the regional plan. And what Tier 1B allows you to do is basically the developer is exempted from an Act 250 review if the certain parameters are met, which is the 50 units or less and 10 acres or smaller. And up until this point, we have had in place a program that allows you to not be under Act 250 if you have 10 units or less. So this is now extending the range of an exemption from Act 250 review from 10 units to 50 units, basically. So bigger projects are now enabled to avoid an Act 250 review. So that's basically what the program is. This is a slight complication with the Jolina Court project in that they're already under an Act 250 permit. And if you're already under an Act 250 permit, you have to continue to be under that Act 250 permit. However, the question is, would they have to get an amendment to their permit for a new building? Because they really only had an Act 250 approval other than their master development plan for their first building. So they are now proposing to build a second building for which they would need an amendment, not thinking about Act 1B at all, but otherwise they would need an amendment to their original permit, right? So the question now is, do they need to get an amendment or not? And they would need to get from the Act 250 board a jurisdictional opinion as to whether or not they would need to get an amendment. So there's a slight question there about whether it would even apply to them. Most information that we've gotten so far is that they probably would not need to get an amendment to their Act 250 permit because this was a different building. But there's still some question. The way it affects all of the Jolina Court project activity is it would be very helpful to them, obviously. They did not have to go through the expense and the time of getting an Act 250 amendment to their original permit. So if they could just build it. So what's difficult about it is that it means the town assumes the responsibility for looking as Act 250 would look at all the natural resources concerns. All the things that Act 250 would be checking for, would be investigating this, 10 criteria. There's a lot of review that goes on with Act 250. The town would now be responsible for it if we opt in to 1B. So that's the dilemma, do we want to opt into 1B so that developers have an easier time? A barrier to housing development is removed. That's why the program has been instituted. For us, the question is, can we do it properly? Do we have the ordinances and the staff to properly look at projects? And the Planning Commission's feeling was we don't really, and that there's a political piece to it, that we are now totally responsible. If there's a problem, Act 250 cannot be invoked as really studying these parameters. And if engineering studies are needed or any other kind of studies, they're on the town's dollar, not on Act 250's dollar.
It is a pass through though to the developer on the dollar side of it, but
yeah,
we would have to outlay it.
Yeah. So those are the 2 points of view that are represented by the Housing Committee, who is pro opting into 1B to remove this barrier to housing development. The Planning Commission's reluctance to say that, it works for bigger towns, this kind of program. It works for Burlington, South Burlington, who have a big staff, who have, more resources. They're used to this kind of project. They have experience with big projects and how to review them properly. For the smaller towns, it's not a very good fit. So that was the Planning Commission's concern.
Okay. I know we have several people on the Zoom who also are wanting to speak, but Bard, go ahead.
Well, I have one mechanical question. So what is a housing project? By which I mean, in terms of Jolina Court, where is the 50 unit threshold? Is that per building, or I'm really wondering when they hit the 50? Like
No,
if it's,
it's new construction,
okay,
okay?
so
and they
each
have
time you build a building, if it's under 50, you don't trip?
That's correct.
So you do 49, 49,
It'll
49,
be 50
49.
or below. 50
Yeah.
or below. The number is 50 and 10 acres.
Yeah,
This is why up until now, we've had many projects that are 9 units.
yes.
That's why we
Yeah.
have subdivisions that way.
So they're.
So that's where I was going with that
Right.
question. So people are gonna, now they'll do it slightly differently,
Right.
potentially. How many staff do we have in the planning division right now?
How many staff?
Yeah, the other thing too is there's dual policy objectives, right? One is to do the right work to protect the things that are covered by Act 250 within the town, but actually do that more expeditiously and efficiently than is being done now. So it's both sides.
Faster and well is the idea, right?
Yeah, it's a money thing.
Yeah, I mean, as far as any review that the town would do, it'd be under the auspices of the current zoning, which requires state permits. It would not be as thorough as an environmental review. It's just not going to be as thorough as that. I mean, that's just a fact. We don't have the staff in that.
Okay, so I believe Maya and Andrew and Connie probably all want to speak to this. I think. Does anybody want to go first?
Maya, CCRCP.
Right, Maya, do you have CCRPC's point of view on this? Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'm Maya Balasa, planner at CCRPC. We spoke to the planning commission, we're kind of letting you guys decide about this, but the only things I'd want to clarify is that Tier 1B is only allowed in places that are planned for growth, which is defined in Act 181 and has been mapped in the regional future land use map. So in areas served by wastewater and sewer, and outside of like floodplain and river corridor. Another thing I'll add is that, I lost my train of thought. There are still state permits. I can't remember the list, but there are state permits that are required that have to do with wetlands and other natural resources. Not all of them, but some of them. And currently, under 10 units, it's just zoning. So a building that's 9 units is just being reviewed locally. And has a state permits, but it's not being reviewed by Act 250. So it is that like 11 to 49 range that would be exempt only in the areas that are the water sewer service district, and they can be a smaller boundary within that. So you could opt in for Tier 1B in one parcel if you wanted to. So it could be more kind of targeted in where you think it would make sense to have that kind of density. So that's kind of all. I'm more here to answer any questions that would be of help.
Yeah, I believe Bart has one. Bart, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to follow up, as I'm thinking about this, because that's helpful, if you think about the parameters, then served by water sewer, more than 10 units. I mean, the locations where that could feasibly occur are very, very few.
Well, these are multifamily we're talking about. We're not talking about subdivision here. We're using that 10 unit as an example, and that was from a subdivision. So that's a little nuance there.
But I'm just thinking, in my head, I'm looking at the map of Richmond and saying, where are 10 units going to go within the water sewer district? Just to start with, it's not no properties, but it's a pretty limited number of properties.
Yeah, you probably have to combine existing properties and tear down, rebuild, and I think that's the vision also.
Yeah, I mean, this was something that we talked about quite a bit at the planning commission, is that it's almost moot because there's not any place that right now you could do it. Is it within the 8-year window? If we're thinking about an 8-year window, could you combine properties within this area, water and sewer district, which basically we were considering the whole water and sewer district. As Maya said, you can make an overlay for 1B that's as small as you want. Would that help us? Not really. I mean, you know, the whole water and sewer district being the villages.
So just to,
Well,
in the chat, we have some comments from Chelsea. Chelsea, if any time you want to say these things, you can, but she opposes opting into 1B. We don't have the expert. She says we don't have the expertise to replace the Act 250 functions. We don't have a staff. Sometimes folks don't tell the truth. She says also this is not only water and sewer, it can be shared septic. So
yes.
Yeah, well, it needs to be in a growth area. So that's one thing. And out in the hinterlands are not considered a growth area, so it wouldn't be eligible.
okay. Andrew? You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So it's 9:40, so I'll try to be respectful of everyone's time. I have a host of information I could share about Act Tier 1B and the benefits that it could provide to a place like Richmond. I'll focus on some of the things I heard this evening that are just kind of myth busters that I'd like to address and make sure everyone's aware of. You know, a developer isn't a bad person. A developer is somebody who's in business. Everybody in this room is in business in one way or another. You all make money off the backs of other constituents in our state, in our county. So to paint a developer as somebody who's providing housing as a bad light, to use this term, the developer, it can be tough because a lot of us, I work as a developer, I'm a realtor, I'm an investor, a landlord. I provide excellent housing to people that need it. And when we provide different types of housing, if the only housing that we provide is a $3,300 rental and we provide 15 new units per year, that's 15 different people that move within our community. And every time they move, a lot of people here, I can assure you, you've all thought about moving in the last couple years. You don't really have some place to go. So the more places that we identify as a place to go, that creates movement in the market that allows the young buyer, the old buyer, the middle-aged buyer, the teacher, the attorney, any of them an opportunity to get somewhere else. So when we think about Act Tier 1B, to everyone's point, there's no parcels right now in Richmond that scream, I am ready for 50 units. And that's fine. We don't need a parcel right now today. But to deny the opportunity to opt into this because we don't have something right now loses vision of where things could be in the future. And I am a developer. I have no interest in this. I have interest in Essex. I have interest in Burlington. I have interest in Richmond. Developers go where the opportunity presents itself, and they bring their money, their financing, and their vision to provide housing to people that all of us love and care for. So when you start to move out of water and sewer districts like we're talking about here, there is still a demand to live in the excellent community that we're in. People will build housing on Kenyon Road and Williams Hill and Hillview, everywhere you don't want to see 9 units pop up. If we want to keep seeing 50-acre parcels developed into 9-acre, 9 development units, then we should opt out. If we want to see development centered in the Gateway, in Richmond Village, and where we want it, we really should consider strongly opting into something like this, because it'll raise our hand, like my hand's raised right now, to developers, to people that have the finances to make this happen, to bring money into our community. We're not linchpins looking to suck dollars out like somebody alluded to tonight. We're here to help people have housing. So I don't want to see housing develop in all the rural areas of our community. It really should be centered where we have water and sewer infrastructure to support our clean water. If you look at the Main Street corridor, we have a lot of impervious surface that is used very poorly. We have high lot density coverage in areas that should have lower density. If you build higher, you have less density from a lot coverage perspective, and you have less water that ends up in the river. So there's a great saying that all of us should consider as no good deed goes unpunished. And my opt-in recommendation has negative consequences, and opting out has negative consequences. What the select board has to do is they have to ask themselves which negative consequences they want to accept and which ones they're willing to let go. And I'll yield the rest of my evening to everybody else. You all have our recommendation from the Housing Committee. We feel strongly about this. And I think it's a very well laid out thought that everyone in the room should consider.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Josie, or Jody, I apologize. Which is it?
Josie.
Josie.
Oh, good.
Josie.
Thank you. I just I wanted to add one thing, just what I've learned from both working with Vermont Housing Finance Agency and at the Stowe Housing Task Force about these criteria. And I think I mentioned it at the last select board meeting. And then I had a question for experts around this because I don't pretend to be an expert around the criteria. We have planners that do that here in Stowe that I'm working with. But the one key thing about we talked a lot about wanting affordable housing, and I fully support that. A lot of that needs to come from financing from alternative sources. So grants, rental revolving loans, low interest loans, etc. The part of the process of putting in this tiered status is, as Andrew just put up, is, I think that was Andrew, he said, you're putting up your hand saying, we want housing. This is a priority in our town and our community. That is what choosing 1B, because 1A is not an option for Richmond, but that's what the difference between choosing 1B and not choosing 2 is that the grants, the funding, the support, the resources will not be given to communities that do not say this is our priority. And so that's just another consideration to put into the mix. And then I have a question for Keith and Maya. You guys probably know more, but from my understanding, projects that when you talk about an Act 250, there still is going to be this A&R is still going to do wetlands. They're still going to do environmental hazards. They're still going to do the broad majority of the actual review will still go on. That's my understanding, is that some of the stuff that, I mean, just so you know, everyone knows, is that, and I wonder how many people, I've gone through 3 Act 250 permit reviews. So I actually know what's going on. And a lot of that stuff is it's paperwork and it's hiring of engineers for doing a bat survey, which we've never seen a bat, but we have to do it every single time. It is lots of administration work, and then it's a giant fee. And that fee increases both costs that we incur that then go into the cost of the housing production. So, but from my understanding, so Maya and Keith or anybody else, if you could tell us, like, explain exactly when you say that the town would have to absorb the Act 250 requirements, can you be more specific about what actual permitting and review processes that the town would have to absorb that A&R at the state would not be?
Keith?
I'll take a stab at that. Whatever state permit is required for your development, you would be required to get that state permit. That's basically what it is. So yes, it would be wetlands. It would be endangered species. It'd be what you've gone through previously, regardless. And I'm not 100. You've been through Act 250 more than I have. In fact, I've never been part of an Act 250 proceeding. I only see what the result is. So I'm not exactly sure what they are looking at above and beyond what the state already looks at. I just think it's a group of people that are experts at that.
The state would still be doing wetlands,
yes,
which is the huge. Let's just be very, like, the green belt, the environmental concerns, floodplains, wetlands, all of that would still remain with the state, from my understanding, and that is the burden of the work.
Yes.
Is that accurate? I think it would be useful before the town actually adjudicates on this and says, because that's going to have long tail impacts, especially in, I don't know, I only know my project. I don't know other projects. But I would just adjudicate what type of volume of work would that require? Because I hear you. I totally understand small towns. It doesn't make sense. And I know how overworked you already are, Keith. You know what I mean? So, and I'm just saying, like, maybe it would be useful to understand what would the town actually be absorbing.
It would be administrative time, mostly, to be honest with you. There'd be probably some additional review by yours truly on that, or whoever I train up at this point. But the costs do get passed on to you. I mean, at some point, but we're not charging you by the hour for that, for our time. So that's the absorption that the town would be getting.
Jay, I have a follow-up question for Josie. Thanks for that. Just for context, for those of us like me who have not gone through an Act 250 process, what kind of fees and timelines are you talking about, when you describe those things?
Great question. So the last time I actually looked at this was about 2 years ago, because a lot of this has been changing. So, actually, to do our last PUD, we actually got what's it called? Preconditional approval from A&R to make sure that we had everything lined up before our PUD that we applied for 2013, and that cost about $100,000 in engineering cost and took about 8 months, and that was the precursor, and it actually wasn't the final. And that was just engineering. That wasn't the fee-based cost. The fee-based cost is based on the final cost of construction, which, as you well know, as we've talked about, the thing has gone up. It's sizable. The last time I looked at it, the fees were going to be over $100,000 just in fees, and that was based on 2 or 3 years ago in terms of cost of construction. So it's a giant fee, and I would say it could take 6 to 8 months again. And it's also about seasonality. So FYI, when you kickstart it, because of where this property, at least our property, is located, is because you have to make sure that the permafrost is not, so you can't do any of that type of design stuff at certain seasonalities. And like the bad assessment that we have to do has to be done between April and May. So I've always had to time it around those things. So.
Okay, before we start taking more from the audience, because I get the sense that we could be here all night, and I appreciate the depth of knowledge people bring. We have a choice. Just to frame the choice, we can A, choose to do nothing, B, move to opt in, C, move to not opt in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but right now we don't have any projects that would imminently be affected by this. However, right now, our town zoning and planning department is down 1 employee. We just have planning and we have Keith. Tyler has moved off to a job 4 miles from his house in Morrisville. You can't blame him for that.
Brendan is here.
I'm sorry.
Tyler?
That's Tyler. That's
Oh, that's Tyler?
Yeah.
He logs in as Brendan?
Yeah, he's Brendan.
Oh, no, that's Brendan.
No, it's just.
Are you messing with me?
Isn't that?
No, that's my husband.
I was just saying, I always thought that was yours.
Yeah.
Calls himself Brendan. My eyes are worse than yours.
So we don't have the staff to do a lot of additional work. In fact,
It looks like
Keith is already working substantial extra hours just to do both jobs, and we don't currently have, unless I'm missing something, a bunch of people knocking our doors down who are competent applicants.
Well, we've got maybe, I think, 2 applicants. I did learn of one this afternoon, so I know you had one in the hopper. We had another one as well. But even that, I think, even with the full staff, I get the sense it would be a challenge to administer this with even just 2 of you at full staff.
Yeah, we could change our mind 2 months from now and say, let's
It'd
opt
be
in.
less of a challenge.
It'd be less of a
Yes,
challenge, but
it'll
like,
be a
it
challenge.
would still be.
By the time they finish making their plan, which is also due in 2026, the new regional plan, you will be either opted in or not opted in. The default position is you're not opted in, so you don't have to vote to not opt in. You just either vote to opt in or do nothing.
There is also the possibility that we could opt in for a very specific geographic region of town where we don't see these broader environmental conflicts. I'm thinking,
Well, and it is only for the planned growth areas, which right now are our village areas are.
in the village, we could like shrink that a little bit if we thought that was advantageous to eliminate that. I mean, I'm thinking of like already developed land that we redeveloped in a lumberyard.
Decide where to
Lumberyard,
shrink
for
it
example.
to, exactly. And the other thing about right now, the situation, Jay, is that we're already under interim 1B until July 1st of 2027. So Keith is on the hook for doing this until then.
Regardless, yeah.
I have another key question. It seems like a lot of this is sort of small town problems. Is there the possibility, for the few projects that would come under this, is when they actually get put in front of us, of hiring a consultant to
Yes,
do
yes.
that?
We would do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and we pass that fee on.
So we would basically contract the review of this out.
Yeah, we have, I'm sorry, what was that?
So we like to option it, we could contract out the review on some level and
Yes.
is that done?
We've done that in the past. We've done that in the past a few times.
And the question is, does that save the developer time or money?
And who pays
Gonna
for the
pass it.
contractor?
The developer does.
Yeah.
So it's a pass through.
Eventually, it's a pass through. Yeah.
Okay, so we have 4 hands up and I'm sure we could, like I said, go all night. We have some people who are strongly in favor of it. We have our own staff and the planning commission saying we probably lack the resources. Is
I
there,
don't think so. Do you want to continue it to another
do we
time?
want to continue this to another time? Because, okay,
I would like to continue it so I can.
Yeah, 'cause I
dig
don't
in,
see-
like, I would like to talk to Keith a little more, like just figure out kind of these nuances, because it sounds like we do lack the resources, but we have options to kind of mitigate that
Yeah.
negative consequence.
I also think like in terms of timeliness, sorry, did I?
Nope, go for it.
In terms of timeliness, there was something that said that rang a bell in my ears of this is when you put this in place, you put a statement in the ground of like you want housing. And I think that's an important piece of the time right now that we're in where it's very hard to find developers who want to invest in spaces, and making it more friendly to do so is important. And so, yes, I think that we need a little bit more time to just get all of the details and information and it looks like there's a lot of public opinion around it. I'd like to hear more, and I would like to make sure that that time isn't too long.
right.
You could ask Maya if there is a date certain that they need this.
Maya, is there a date certain that they need this?
So we are starting in this month and next month to take all of our maps and our tier 1B, like what the towns are doing with tier 1B, to our long range planning committee, and then kind of starting in the next year or like early next or this fall, I guess, going through all the processes of our review with the board exec, and then going with the regional review, because the land use review board at the state has to review and approve all of our maps and the tier 1B recommendations. So I have been given direction to try and get this done in June to hear tier 1B recommendations, or opting in by bodies. But this is the new framework for the foreseeable future. So this theoretically we kind of are doing our plan every 8 years at the region. So there's kind of an 8-year mark to relook at this, and there will be a process to kind of opt in or opt out as moving forward. We just haven't had that process that hasn't kind of been worked out at the state yet. I just wanted to clarify one other thing, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
There's not the additional work that is required for tier 1B is because municipalities do already review applications by their zoning in addition to the state review. You're already kind of reviewing projects at the state anyways. So the additional review, I think, would come from trying to add regulations. For instance, transportation is something that often municipalities kind of rely on on Act 50 to review transportation impact. And so if a town wanted to add a regulation on reviewing transportation or transportation studies, that would be the extra work. It's not just inherently more work just by having it, because it is interim right now. So that's kind of, I think, the extra work is when you add regulations, then there's a higher need for the town to review that. So that's all I wanted to clarify.
So, and are you saying June, it would be best to do this by the end of June, or what?
Yes, we would like to have it by the end of June, and if you need more time, then you need more time, and we move forward without action, and then in 6 months you decide to opt in, and we can figure kind of out how to do that with the state at kind of a clunkier process, because we have to get our it's attached to our plan, which is kind of the complicated part, but there will be a process later.
So we could bring this up at the next meeting. We'd still
I
be in
think
June.
that's the way to go, to do more research, to ask the questions we need, and to give everybody who wants to comment adequate time, because like I said, we could be here till 11 o'clock.
Maybe we would dedicate more time to it next time.
Yeah.
And do it at an earlier time in the meeting.
So Mark and Chelsea, I'm very grateful for your hands being up. I hope you can come in a couple of weeks. Okay, so I don't think we need a motion to kick it down the road for a meeting. And I think you all would probably just as soon go home.
Maybe.
Good.
Maybe.
Okay, so with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next item on the agenda, actually, which you are still here. This is item F, discussion of a plan to cover zoning administrative office duties until the position can be filled. Josh.
So as we talked about earlier, Tyler Mesha took another job about 3 weeks ago or so. So that leaves the planning and zoning department with just a staff of one person, which is just Keith, who is our planning and zoning director. We've had a vacancy in this department twice in my last 6.5 years since I've been here. The first time we had CCRPC staff, they had somebody that was able to provide some hours and cover the zoning work during the interim until we could hire somebody. The next time we actually had someone who was working with us part-time when the zoning administrator resigned, and we were able to hire that person short time. She wasn't interested in the long-term commitment, but she helped us out for a few months until we were able to hire somebody new. This year, we don't have anybody in-house, and CCRPC is pretty busy. They're short-staffed as well and don't have anybody to lend us part-time. They did suggest we reach out to about 3 other potential planners who are retired that might want to take the position. I think we've reached out to all 3 of them, heard back from one, they're not interested, another we haven't heard back from yet. So we're chasing down those ideas, but we haven't heard we haven't been able to find anybody there either. As far as full-time applicants, we've got a few people that applied. I think there was 2 people that Keith was interested in. One of them has dropped out. They already found another position. We're working with the other candidate right now. And then I heard just before this meeting, actually, that there's another person who's interested. I can tell you more about them tomorrow. Okay. So we might be moving forward to fill the position here, hopefully shortly, but we'll see. So in the interim, this puts the work of the 40-hour zoning position on Keith, as well as the 40 hours of his regular work in planning. And he's asked for a stipend to cover that time. The sort of, I think if this was like a lateral job, like if Keith didn't oversee this position, it might be a fairly easy request to say, okay, there's more work you're taking on in the lateral side. We could do something, or I've called around to other towns and VLCT, and they said they've seen instances where if someone's covering for their superior who's out, then they get a little bit of extra money because they're taking on job duties that are above their level. I have heard from 1 or 2 towns that there's been instances where they've had something similar to this, where a salaried person is in a small department and they've taken on extra duties because their 1 or 2 staff has left, and they've gotten a stipend to cover themselves for that time period. But it is a bit unique, and I think what Keith's asking for is not unreasonable. I wanted to bring it to the select board because we don't really have a policy. It's not covered in our personnel guidelines. We don't have a compensation policy that covers this. And I do want to just talk through that, in this instance, if we do it with Keith, there's times when water and sewer or highway is short-staffed. And would it be reasonable to then kind of consider this on a case-by-case basis for other departments? Because I can make an argument that, okay, if Pete's short-staffed 1 or 2 guys over the winter especially, that means someone has to cover that plow truck route. And he might be the guy that's doing that. And if he had full staff at that time, he wouldn't have to cover that plow truck route. So I think there's nuance to each one of these department vacancies, but wanted to discuss it with the select board so we didn't make the decision without thinking of alternatives and in a vacuum.
Okay. So lots of options out there as far as potential people to fill, but no one's kicking our door in right now. So we're talking about a stipend for Keith Hoborn until the end of August, or until we get a temporary full-time zoning administrator, whichever comes first. Thoughts?
My first one is just a question, how many extra hours does this look like in a week?
Yeah, so we're going on week 3, since Tyler left. I'm averaging somewhere around 52 to 55. A lot of my work is done at home, and that's to cover the planning aspect of my portfolio. I'm here a lot more now, to cover the zoning aspect. So in short, it's an additional, I would say 12 to 15, but some of that is being absorbed. I mean, some of my planning portfolio is being absorbed with the zoning aspect of it too. So it's not a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
I'm not working 80 hours a week, and I'm not asking for 80 hours a week of compensation, but it's just something to cover the extra hours that are
Right, and this is still a net,
part of it on that.
and this is still a net savings because Tyler had been making over twice what the stipend would be. But of course, he was also working 40 hours in this position. I usually like to let the board discuss first, but I think it's reasonable. David, you're nodding. What do you think?
No, I agree. It's reasonable.
I think it's reasonable. I have pretty strong feelings about this because this has happened to me and my wife a few times in salary positions at, higher levels where my wife's been covering, she's been covering 3 jobs now for 4 months. And there's there's no money in the budget to pay for a temp or to hire or whatever. But there was money in the budget to hire 2 $100,000 a year people. So the company will absorb the $200,000 a year, throw 70 hours a week at someone with 2 kids. And so there's fundamentally we either think that half of this work should get dropped or we think we should pay Keith for it. And I think that I think that does open up a broader discussion about other stuff, specifically in salary positions. I think hourly getting overtime, that kind of sorts itself out. But a salary exempt position, when you start asking someone to do stuff above and beyond what the job duties are, you change the goalposts. And so it's reasonable that the pay should change either temporarily or permanently to reflect that.
Yeah, I think a key piece of what you're saying there is the reason that we're asking you to work more is because we are not paying someone in a position for a set amount of time. And I would assume that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if we have others in this situation where we're short-staffed over the winter or so forth, it's because we're not staffed up to what we should be. And so then we're actually just using the money that's allocated to that anyways. Is that fair to say or no?
Okay, well, if you're all in agreement, let's take comment from the audience. First, Chelsea, you've got your hand up.
I think she's had it up for a while.
Just in case.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I just actually raised it again, Adam. Sorry. I did want to just speak to this. Just to speak from a resident point of view, I'm fully in support of this stipend. I think that it's important for the town to value the extra work that Keith is going to be putting forth. And I think furthermore, I'd like to expand on that in that I would like to see a lot of care given to the decision in who is appointed as our next zoning administrator. And in my opinion, giving Keith a stipend and sort of not feeling like we're, sort of shortchanging him, thus feeling as if we need to be rushed into a decision about a zoning administrator. I think that if this is done, the board as a whole will feel a lot better about taking some time and care in that decision. Not to say you wouldn't previously, but the previous, there was just some pretty serious mistakes being made. And I would love to see somebody in that position who perhaps isn't making those mistakes. So I am in support of this. Thank you.
Are you ready for a motion? So, Mr. Chair, I move to provide a $500 per week stipend to Director of Planning and Zoning Keith Oborn through the end of August 2025, or until a temporary or full-time zoning administrative officer is hired, whichever comes first.
Caitlin, will second.
Okay, we have a motion by David Sanders, seconded by Caitlin Filkins, to provide a $500 per week stipend to the Director of Planning and Zoning Keith Oborn through the end of August 2025, or until a temporary or full-time zoning administrator is hired, whichever comes first. Is there any further discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
David, aye.
Caitlin, aye.
Bart, aye.
Adam, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, thank you so much, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Fire chief.
Sorry, Chelsea.
Fire chief. Our previous fire chief, is retiring as of July 1st. And at the last meeting, we had discussed having a couple of select board members to help Josh with interviewing candidates. We talked about if we're going to term limit the chief so that they would not be indefinite, as well as would we consider hiring a non-resident. Josh says that he thinks a term of 1 or 2 years is reasonable. We could always reappoint. Hiring a non-resident is a longer conversation that would involve a budget change because that person would likely command a higher wage than a resident chief. Josh's recommendation is that we set a term of 1 year and in the interview process, ask the candidates about their willingness to help the department explore changes in staffing levels and have a recommendation time to fiscal year 27 budget process. So that's kind of setting the stage. There's no motion to be made here, but what do people think about all this?
Let me just jump in one thing quick before this. I know that some of the members of the fire department did want to be here tonight, but they had a really big call up on the interstate.
That truck.
That truck at around 5:30.
Completely blocked 89 north.
And I just got the text message like 10 minutes ago that it's been cleared and it's open. So they're quite busy this evening.
The truck was heading right. It was just completely jackknifed on its side.
I'm not sure.
Across the median into the southbound lane,
Oh.
back into the northbound lane, overturned and completely blocked both travel lanes and the shoulder.
And there were people there holding up signs saying 10 points, right? I hope the driver was not injured.
He was not injured.
Okay. Okay, so thoughts, now that we've got that.
I guess my only thing, from talking with some of the members, I think that long-term, we're gonna have to explore this, more options for staffing our department and all positions, including chief. But short term, I think there's a lot of momentum that the department has and has gained. And so just, I guess, after reflecting on it for a couple of weeks, I think setting the term for 1 year kind of indicates that we are going to view this as purely a stopgap and not really get behind the department as it sits and keep that momentum going. I think there's a lot of progress we can make without necessarily directly hiring someone from outside. Not that that collaboration wouldn't keep happening. I mean, it's already happening. So I guess my one hold up with this would be the 1 year term. I think that the rest of it makes sense. I think that everyone in the department's kind of in agreement, but I would kind of lean much more towards like a 3 or 4 year kind of thing. I think that's kind of the amount of time it would take for a chief, even Jerry coming in to take over, to really get the processes, the trust, and the team put together and then implement some changes. And I think he's making a lot of progress, but even like 1 or 2 years isn't enough time to really see that through. And so I'm thinking more like the 3 or 4 is kind of going to be good. And I think that from talking Jerry Levesque is the assistant chief now, he would be interested in doing that. I don't think he's going to want to do 2 terms of 4 years, but I think 1 3 or 4 year term, Jerry would want to and is up for and has the skills to do that and make a lot of good changes with a good team behind him. And he's building that team and he's willing to do it. So I guess that would be my 2 cents.
Okay. Caitlin?
I think that, so I wasn't here last week, or last time, I apologize. I think I would really love to hear from the fire department more. Obviously I'm hearing from you, Adam, but like I'd love to directly. So I think I'd like to weigh in after hearing from them.
Okay. I'm gonna throw a question open. I would be happy to be one of the 2 select board members to interview. I know that we've got a member of the department.
Oh, can I elaborate on that quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the same thing, I would like to do this too, and I think Josh and I had an important revelation recently. So
was there light coming to heaven?
There was through the clouds that we've had for the last 6 months. So as a member of the select board, I can't be a town employee, and our town department, our fire department, and our town employees. So I have talked to Josh, talked to Jerry about this. I'm not going to respond to calls. I'm not going to go to trainings. I'm not going to do anything that would put me at risk of a workers' comp claim, basically. And so I will not be charging any time. I'm going to stay. They're going to keep me on like the roster as like a just
Mascot.
because it's easier from like a training standpoint for the state, basically a mascot. But yeah, so I'm gonna step away from that. And so also I'm gonna step away from it because I would like to be part of this process on the select board side and I can't do both.
Okay. So we have 2 volunteers, but does anybody else want to put their name in the hat? Okay, I'm seeing some subtle.
Okay, by me.
That's great.
Okay, so it looks like we have 2.
Good.
Okay.
I guess, I mean, there's no one here right now, but if anyone has concerns.
Dennis is here.
Oh, if anyone has concerns about it, and I think more the fire department, I mean, I was gonna encourage Josh, like reach out to them if they have any concerns. I don't think they're gonna necessarily tell me. So Josh, if you could reach out and make sure that everyone's okay with that. I mean, if they're not, I would gladly step back.
And Bart?
Do we want to discuss the duration?
Oh, yeah, that's not closed.
Okay.
So about the duration, I think that 1 year, I can see a number of options that, once we've got this thing to where it could be, with 20 people routinely coming to trainings and meetings and unicorns are showing up to take people to calls and all that. Going to 2-year terms might make sense, but I think as we're building back up, I think a longer term would make sense. We can always change down the road, but I think 1 year to start off. I mean, again, this is a town manager who's actually in charge of employees has recommended 1. So maybe I should shut up and let him talk.
I'm fine. I was only recommending 1 if we we're going to try to like move fairly quickly to like maybe look at an outside person for the job. But I think what Adam says makes sense. If we can do it for 3 years and we get some momentum going inside the department, we're happy with that, then that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the option stuff changes, right? And we're gonna have to kind of go into this expecting it to be a dynamic situation for the indefinite future, because that's just kind of how volunteer fire departments are right now. But from talking to surrounding departments and kind of seeing what they do for terms, it's generally 3 to 7, and like the sweet spot is 4 or 5 years that they do. Granted, they're on a different footing than us, but not entirely so in all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a few that kind of have the indefinite appointed until catastrophe or death situation. So I think that formalizing a review process in some number of years is the important part.
So it's Bart, I kind of like the 3-year for a couple of reasons, but I also have a question about probationary status. Do we have a duration for that?
I don't think we have anything
Yeah.
in policy about that.
I bet we don't.
The nearest we've got is for police, you have a 1-year probation. All the other positions don't.
Well, I think if you're a new hire, you've got like a 30 or 60-day probation. There is a probationary period for a brand new hire.
Okay.
But assuming this is somebody in-house,
Yes.
they've been employed.
I just thought it was relevant to the duration.
No, good question.
Okay, so do we have a preference to as that we can give to Josh? I mean, we've heard a lot of let's go longer than a year. Do we want to say 3 to 4? 3?
Like I want to do something different. Please sounds recent.
You can do this. Okay. So that does not require a motion because
It's getting late.
this is advice from the manager. Okay. Moving on, and poor Pete has been sitting here so patient. Discussion of traffic calming measures on Bridge Street from the intersection with Route 2 to the Road. Prior to the flooding in 2024, this is your cue to go flooding. What flooding? Yeah. We had actually had a whole meeting specifically on the topic of traffic calming, the safety improvements to the stretch from Bridge Street to Huntington Road. And some of those proposals are listed here in the memo. Stop bars at all stop signs on side streets intersecting with Bridge, Cochran, Thompson, that has been completed. Will be completed this summer. Foldable delineators painted at the edge of the painted sidewalk. Those are things that cars can run over without harming themselves, but they're visible. They're, in the roadway in front of the Richmond Market. Creating compact car-only spaces in the 2 stalls immediately adjacent to the crosswalk and Bridge Street because we've got enormous trucks there. You can't see people waiting. Installing a foldable delineator in the middle of the crosswalk. Again, like they have at the airport. If you've ever been to Burlington Airport, as you're pulling under the arch there's a stop sign in the middle of the road. And install a rectangular rapid flashing beacon crosswalk across Bridge Street at the intersection of Jolina Court and Railroad Street, as we discussed, I believe, last week. Pete, do you have anything you want to add to that? This is kind of your show. You're muted.
No, here we go. Yeah. Josh and I talked about all these things. Most of the painting stuff is already complete. I have a lot of things I actually want to add that touch on other segments. The TBHC intersection, I've got some ideas for that. Got some ideas to help some stuff on the Cochrane Road around Church End for speed issues. I've got comments to make on Hinesburg Road face corners and East Hill. I don't know if we got time for all this tonight, so let's just stick with Bridge Street. Bridge Street, yes, those items are fairly simple. In addition to that, what I see is the pedestrian crossing signs all the way down that Bridge Street corridor are very, very faded. It probably would be really worth, replacing all them signs to, high intensity neon green, the new pedestrian crossing signs to make it more visible for the pedestrians. Moving up to the Cochrane Road, Thompson Road, Huntington Road intersection, this discussion's come up many times about the safety of that corner, being two pedestrian crosswalks, one of them in the curve, one of them at the end of the sidewalk. Vehicles speeding from Huntington Road straight into Cochrane Road, vehicles coming off Cochrane Road, not stopping at the stop sign. You know me, I look at things, I listen to all these traffic engineers, and that's great, it's perfect world. But I look at simple solutions that are very cost effective. I will say, and I'm going to kick myself, but those paved speed bumps that we put in on Cochrane Road, if you look at that speed study, especially the Jonesville, the average speed was 24 miles an hour in that whole corridor where those speed bumps were. I would say those speed bumps are effective. So here's my proposal. Just back up to the Thompson Road intersection. Number one, install a red flashing beacon on the stop sign at the end of Cochrane Road, which will give you, more of a warning to actually stop there. There's a painted stop bar there. And here's the big thing that may make a huge difference on that whole intersection. Install another paved speed bump at the island of the Long Trail Physical Therapy. That will slow vehicles coming into the village, into that corner. It'll also slow them just before that pedestrian crossing. There's two pedestrian crossings there. And, it'll slow them entering into Cochrane Road. Fairly inexpensive, simple thing to do. It's in the 25-mile-an-hour zone. It'll require some signs and whatnot, a little more painting. These are simple things to try. Just wanted to throw it out there. You don't have to decide on anything tonight, but putting mountable islands in the middle of the road and pinching the traffic, make them make 90-degree corners. It doesn't work for trucks. I mean, nobody ever talks about 53-foot tractor trailers, but in mobile homes and heavy equipment, but with low boy trailers that are 4 inches off the ground. I mean, that stuff can't maneuver through those islands very easily, and let alone plow trucks. So.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of nods, Pete, as you list these additional things. I'm not seeing, there may be questions, but I'm not seeing a lot of opposition to what you proposed.
So I'm just throwing those things out there. I mean, if we're going to look at that Bridge Street corridor, the signage, I think, definitely needs to be brought, replaced. I mean, they're faded. It's quite faded. A couple simple changes up at that intersection might make a huge difference. I can't see how it'll make it any worse. And it's going to force people to slow down as they enter that corner. They will not have a choice. And what we found is those speed bumps force you to slow down. I mean, you need that physical deterrent. Signage doesn't do it. Sorry, but
yeah.
I like that. I agree. I've spent a lot of time at that intersection, and I have experience coming out of Thompson Road in the busy mornings and the later afternoons from the daycare back there. And I'm just thinking like I like that idea. I think that will work. And people who come around that corner, it's hard to see them. And so if they're going slower, that will help. But it's still hard to see them. It's hard to see people in the crosswalk. It's hard to understand like what the right of way is there, even because the stop sign at Cochrane, stop sign at Thompson, and then like when does that car go versus when do I go? And it's kind of just like knowing the right of way. I don't know what the traffic pattern is there. If you if we've considered anything else, like additional stop signs or anything, and making that a four-way stop versus just putting in the humps, but I just have to ask it. Have we like looked at the traffic pattern there? If that would totally back up traffic or anything?
That was one of the proposals for all this stuff.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a whole study done, what, a year or so ago, Josh? With a bunch of different proposals, one of them being a mountable island in the middle, one of them being a four-way stop. There was several different things, sidewalk on both sides of the road, all very costly. And I think quote me if I'm right, the select board opted not to do those physical changes to the road. That we're going to seek other alternatives at this point. So I'm offering you a simple alternative to try, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Pete, given the effectiveness of the speed bumps where they are, I think it's well worth trying to put one there along trail physical therapy.
Yeah.
Can't hurt.
You can't hurt that pavement any more than it is either. So
Yeah.
we just patched that whole segment up there. It took 32 tons of asphalt to patch those wheel ruts. That's how bad it was.
Really? Well,
It was horrible. I mean,
I guess the one remaining question is, do we want to allow people or businesses to sponsor the speed bumps and have a sign up saying the speed bump sponsored
Adopt the
by...
speed bump. Physical therapy.
it could give them some business, right?
Need a billboard.
And maybe we can, one thing I did want to ask is I see there's a traffic ordinance thing tonight. I know that's another agenda or two from now item, but is that the new speed changes or anything like that? Or is that something totally off separate?
That's the Conklin Road 35-mile-per-hour zones that we talked about at the last meeting.
Again, Face Corners, Hinesburg Road. I just got to get it out there. That is your number one hotspot in this town. So, and if you haven't heard that yet, right?
No, sorry, Pete. I just right after I spoke, a message popped up that said, "Confirm your speaking language. It sounds like you might have switched to a different language. Please update it so we can better translate the meeting." So I think I need to enunciate more.
I would love to discuss that corner issue up there, the signage, the speed issues, the vehicles going into houses, as well as East Hill and the 90-degree corner by Christmas Hill. Got some ideas for all of that too, but
I want to put that on the agenda for next meeting.
Or do you want to,
Or do you want
to give us the 3-minute overview on that?
I can, I'm going to be quick.
You're talking about lights, right? Like it's not
quick and simple. Number one, it's got to be a speed ordinance change. Okay. That it's posted 40 miles an hour coming into a 90-degree corner. And I know they've done the traffic studies there. They don't feel like there's a speed issue, but everybody that lives there has pleaded with me for years about the problems going on there. And I see it. There's multiple cars going off the corner all the time up there.
Yeah.
That being said, that zone is now posted at 40. So if it was dropped to 30, which is a 1-speed change, it'd be fairly easy to do. And I would propose to change it from Wild Apple Lane up to Rocky Road. Make that whole zone 30 miles an hour. It's highly residential. I would also propose to add 2 speed bumps. One would be, the 2 of them would be, let's see, where can I write this here? 2 would be on the south side, which would be the Hinesburg side of Face Corners, and 1 would be on the east side. The east side would be adjacent to the parking pull-off. So as you were to come over the little short bridge and be in that flat spot, there'd be 1 right there to slow the traffic before they gets to the 2 corners. It won't, because it won't be on a hill. It'll be fairly easy. The other 2 will be, 1 will be up around the corner there's a culvert up there that crosses. There will be 1 there and then 1 a little bit further up. I can give you exact locations if you want to get technical on it. Also install flashing beacons, yellow flashing beacons, 2 on either side of that corner. 1 of them being on the posted corner, which would have the speed placard on it. And then 1 on the 90-degree arrow, the 4-foot arrow. There'd be yellow flashing beacons. It's just more of a caution. Third thing would be changing some of the signage that would be coming from the Hinesburg side. They're very poor signs. There's a yield sign you can't even read anymore. Fairly simple things again, but it would involve a speed change up there. I have talked to quite a few residents in that area, and they totally support something like this because they know it's not signage that's going to stop this problem. It needs something physical. It needs something physical. Moving over to the East Hill 90-degree corner at the bottom of Christmas Hill, I would propose adding yellow flashing beacons onto those speed placard curve signs, which would illuminate, flash, and also on the 4-foot arrows. So in the evening hours, you know, if you're not familiar with the road, at least you're going to have a pre-warning and then a warning on that sign, which will flash. Those signs are all up to code over there. They're fairly new. We've had a few incidents where people missed that corner, and a lot of it was speed, but fairly easy changes to do. I'm looking in the price of these right now. If you want to know what these beacons look like, if you drive the Hinesburg Hollow Road from Hinesburg and come into Huntington, right when you get to the stop sign, they have one on the stop ahead sign, a flashing red, and one actually on the stop sign. So they're like an LED blinking light, red. They're fairly bright. They have a little solar head on them and a battery in them. They're just they mount right on top of the post. I can't imagine they're overly expensive, but they seem to be pretty effective. So
it sounds like we might be overspending the sign budget a little bit, but it sounds like it's worth it.
Well, it comes down to the traffic calming and the safety of the road. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
You know, and we have the traffic calming budget, which would cover these things very easily.
Right, good point.
Instead of, you know, ripping the road up and putting, you know, changing the angle of curves and everything else to slow cars down and spend tens of thousands of dollars or even $100,000s of dollars. I mean, we're spending, you know, significantly less by just changing some signage and putting in a few speed bumps and a speed change. So things to consider, things we can talk about more in the future.
And I think the lights are fairly easy. The speed change, as we know, requires a speed study.
Yeah.
They are doing another speed study on Hinesburg Road right now. You've probably seen some of the speed tubes out if you've traveled in the last week. So maybe we'll have some more feedback from them. I think the last time they did it was about 4 years ago. So they're trying to freshen that up. So if we get a speed change, then maybe we can consider the speed humps. But I think those would have to be at the fastest 30 miles an hour speed limit.
Probably have to drop it to 25 in that zone.
I was going to say probably have to be pretty slow. But I don't know. I like the idea of at least some of the lights and some freshened up signage.
Yeah, that's pretty simple. Yep.
Okie doke. Well, Pete, we are going to thank you and look forward to all this and go to bed.
Okay. Well, I wanted to get that out there, you know, so hopefully it's good news, but I just wanted to see how you felt about it. So
I do feel positive. Thumbs up.
One other thing, it's a purchase order. Do I need to talk about that, Josh, or?
I think I got it.
You got it? Okay.
We're good.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Pete.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just going to give a heads up. If you're looking forward, we've got 4 things left. One of them is the coin drop for the July 4th committee. And I'm just going to briefly say we had to call that off because it was pouring and it's actually illegal to do a coin drop on a state route in the rain. So, and it was 40 degrees out. No one was driving. And we don't have a preferred date yet that we can get volunteers out there. So we can just basically ignore item K. So that leaves us with the police chief agreement, a public hearing for the traffic ordinance, accepting a loan, and then a brief executive session. So our last meeting item is discussion of amending and extending the agreement with Hinesburg for police services and discussion of searching for interim shared chief. And so we have the 2 people of the joint Hinesburg, Richmond Police Operations Committee. We have Josh, who wants to go first.
Sure. So we'll start with sort of a 2-part agenda item. The agreement with Hinesburg expires at the end of June. Hinesburg has requested that this become a reciprocal agreement where it would allow for Richmond officers to also cover Hinesburg. Currently, it just allows for Hinesburg officers to cover Richmond. I understand that scheduling is becoming a bit of a challenge as Hinesburg is short-staffed and we're short-staffed as well. So they'd like to have it more reciprocal where we can each cover each other's shifts. Sergeant Matt Cohen in the meeting last Monday or Tuesday with the governance committee noted that he didn't seem to have much of an issue with that, but he talked with Chris Hoare from the union and he disclosed that Chris Hoare was looking to seek additional pay for officers while they're covering Hinesburg in addition to Richmond. So he shared that in the meeting, which I think we would need to discuss, and we can discuss that. That's sort of the executive session part of how do we want to respond to that from the union. And then the next part is the interim chief. The committee's been talking a lot about this actually. We brought in Jim Baker, who's a law enforcement professional and has helped with some of these searches in the past. His basic advice to the committee was you don't need a chief right now. He's like, get somebody who can come in the interim and really help guide the towns through the process of how do you want to work together? Is it a contract? Is it union municipal district? What shared services are you going to have? What will that look like? And you need somebody that can come in and help do that, as well as administer the department. He's willing to conduct that sort of headhunting search for about $4,000, which we'd split with Hinesburg, 2,000 from them, 2,000 from us. And then with the idea that that interim person would help us get to the next step.
Very reasonable.
Bard, David, you want to add anything to that?
I actually unfortunately had to miss the meeting because I got tied up at work.
Dude. I just like seeing dude.
Would much rather have been there.
The only thing, can we talk about our next steps in terms of collective bargaining, just what we know?
Matt's off his probation, right?
Yeah, on the 13th. Yes. And at that point, I anticipate we would probably go back to the table with the union. That was the main reason why we stopped those conversations. And that would be for the overall agreement, which actually expired at the end of last June. We had been starting to negotiate with them in the winter and withdrew from those negotiations once we no longer had any non-probationary officers.
And what happened again for a labor complaint?
It's still working its way through the system. So,
no.
Yeah. So do you guys want to go into executive session now to talk about that, or at the end of the meeting?
I think that having the new agreement with Hinesburg and the collective bargaining thing are like, they're obviously interlinked, but like kind of separate issues. We want to move forward with this new agreement, right? And we'll have to conduct the collective bargaining agreement however necessary, and that's kind of up in the air a little bit how that would shake out. But to make that happen, is that kind of
for the one-off for the agreement or for the whole
for the
agreement with Hinesburg?
No, for the agreement, for the collective bargaining agreement with our officers. We would have to negotiate that, however, is necessary to make the to make the cooperation agreement with Hinesburg work, right?
Well, so that's part of what we would want to talk about the lawyer's advice and feedback on how to proceed with doing the agreement or changing the agreement with Hinesburg and how we want to work with the union on that.
Should we just do that now then?
I think we should.
Okay. I move to find that premature public knowledge about a police services agreement with Hinesburg would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage.
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Adam Woods, seconded by David Sander, to find that premature public knowledge about a police services agreement with Hinesburg would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage. Any discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, I.
Bart, I. Adam, I.
Jay, I.
Move that we enter into executive session to discuss a police services agreement with Hinesburg under the provisions of VSA 313A1A and VSA 313A1F of the Vermont statutes.
Caitlin, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Adam Woods, seconded by Caitlin Filkins, to enter into executive session to discuss a police services agreement with Hinesburg under the provisions of VSA 313A1A and VSA 313A1F of the Vermont statutes. Folks watching this later, we will be back. Do we want to pause it since no one's live watching and we could just resume the recording when we get back?
I'll just.
Or MNCTV can edit that out.
Yeah, they'll probably edit it out. I just figure in case somebody joins while we're, I just don't know.
Good point. Okay. So let's go into.
Doubtful, but.
First we got the kitchen. Next door.
Right. We didn't vote.
All in favor? Tell your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
Jay, aye. Thank you.
Worst things have happened.
All right, I make a motion that we set the,
Okay, the next item is consideration of setting a date for public hearing to amend the traffic ordinance. We have proposed to amend the traffic speeds on Cochrane Road, instead of going directly from 25 to 45 and vice versa, to have transitional zones of 35 miles an hour. We have to have a hearing for that. We would then vote in approval if we approve it. And if we did approve it, it would take back 60 days after the adoption date, assuming that there's not a petition brought to stop us.
so today's June 2nd, so we would, well, the notice on the 12th. Set the hearing for July 7th, and have it allow these ordinances to go into effect if adopted on September 5th. Right, so I move to set the hearing date of July 7th at 7 p.m. for proposed amendments to the traffic ordinance.
This is David, I'll second.
We have a motion from Adam Wood, seconded by David Sander, to set a hearing date of July 7th at 7 p.m. for proposed amendments to the traffic ordinance. Please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, I.
Bart, aye. Adam, I.
Jay, aye. Last, before purchase orders and minutes and all that, consideration of accepting a loan from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for step one design of the flood mitigation project. Now, this is gonna be a hard sell in, but hear me out, for the wastewater pump and force main at 100% subsidy.
We really call it a
Agreed
loan?
with 50% subsidy, but they begged us to take 100, and I feel bad turning.
They
it down.
strong armed us in.
Yeah.
I move to accept the strong arm loan from, accept the loan from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for step one design of the flood mitigation project for the wastewater pump force main at 100% subsidy.
This is David, I'll second.
We have a motion from Adam Wood, seconded by David Sander, to accept the loan from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for step one design of the flood mitigation project for the wastewater pump and force main at 100% subsidy. Please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Minutes of May 19th. Any comments, questions, changes, additions, deletions?
Does David move to approve?
Adam, second.
A motion from David Sanders, seconded by Adam Wood, to approve the minutes of May 19th, 2025. Please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
And Jay, aye. Next, purchase orders.
I move to approve purchase order
Well, let's bring it up first so that watching.
We all have it.
And there is one that isn't in your memo, so
So the extra one from Pete, right?
the extra one. So this one's in the memo, so go ahead.
So I move to approve the purchase order number 5168 to the town of Williston for an allocation of the Community Justice Center in the amount of $15,840.
This is David, I'll second.
And we have a motion from Adam Wood, seconded by David Center, to approve purchase order 5168 for the Community Justice Center to the town of Williston for $15,840. Please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
Jay, aye. Next.
All right, this next one is one that Pete added this afternoon. It's to SD Ireland.
We have, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going in numerical order. I'm sorry. If you want to jump ahead, go ahead.
No, go for it. Numerical order. We're
yeah.
fast. Gosh.
Okay, so this is for the concrete for the East Main Street sidewalk project. Pete and the crew are going to actually build the sidewalks themselves, but they need to buy the concrete. So this is the lowest bid that he had to buy the concrete for $74,543.
Nice.
This is Adam. I make a motion that we approve purchase order 5258 to SD Ireland for an amount of $74,543 for concrete for the East Main Street sidewalk project.
This is David, I'll second.
And a motion made by Adam Wood, seconded by David Sander, to approve purchase order 5258 to SD Ireland for concrete for the sidewalks in an amount of $74,543. Please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
Jay, aye. Last purchase order.
Move to approve purchase order number 5290 to Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District for education taxes in the amount of $2,091,980.
This is David, I'll second.
Motion from Adam Wood, seconded by David Center, to approve purchase order 5290 to Mount Mansfield Modified Union School District. For school taxes, the amount of $2,091,908. Please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, I.
Bart, aye.
Adam, I.
Jay, aye. Now we need a motion to approve the warrants.
This is David, so moved.
Adam, second.
Motion from David Center, seconded by Adam Wood to approve the warrants as presented. Any questions about this warrant? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
David, I.
Caitlin, I.
Art, I. Adam, I.
Aye. Items for next agenda. We've already identified the tier, 1B.
I'll lay the fire department in to talk about that stuff.
Hiring update, if any.
Yeah.
Maybe an update on where we are with policing, whatever state we're in.
Oh, the Black Lives Matter sign, codifying what we're approving.
And
then-
time.
And then, of course, building the new dog park.
In the Andrews Community Forest.
Yeah. Okay, anything else you know how to find us? Any questions? for
Sorry,
town manager?
we had tier 1B, fire department, police agreement. I was trying to rate quick. What was the other ones we had?
Dog park.
Dog park
No,
and
bring it back.
codifying what we're actually approving out as far as a sign.
Oh, the sign, that's
Do you
right.
want to do timeline too of that sign or do that
Yeah,
separately?
talk about the timeline, right?
Oh, the time, yeah, oh, that's right. Okay, I have that earlier notes.
This may not be an actual agenda item, but the town sign here, the town center sign is showing some need of attention.
That was a Boy Scout project, right?
Yeah.
It was just a few years ago.
We should go find the kid.
Might need
Or
to
be
be
thought-
rushed. Right.
I don't think it's an agenda item here, but
It pains me to say this, that if there was a committee that was tasked with overseeing this building.
Okay, so I have a motion for adjourn.
Is David so moved?
Adam, second.
Motion for David Center, second by Adam Wood to adjourn. Please state your name and your vote.
This is David. I'm gonna say aye.
Caitlin, I.
Art, I.
Adam, I.
Say aye, we are adjourned.